Chapter 1038. Grandpa, let me join too. When these words came out of Noah's mouth, all the attention of Fairy Tale immediately focused on Noah. Noah? Mira was stunned. Big brother Noah? Lisanna also looked at Noah in a daze. You want to join too? Even Makarov was slightly stunned, and then hesitated. It wasn't that Makarov was worried that something would happen to Noah. Everyone already knew what kind of strength Noah had. Back then, the guild leader of Grimoire Heart, Hades, had almost put Makarov, one of the top 10 Saint Magi, in danger with just one attack. One could imagine his strength. Noah, on the other hand, fought to a draw with Hades in front of all the magic shooters from Fairy Tale. Even Alusha, Naz, Gray, and even Lucy could participate in this crusade mission. With such strength, Noah naturally had the qualifications to participate. However, in the eyes of Fairy Tale's people, Noah was the next guild leader that Makarov had decided on. As the next guild leader, everyone naturally didn't think that Noah would want to participate in the crusade mission. Especially Makarov, who had originally planned to hide Noah for a period of time until the new council was formed before letting Noah go out. After all, the current magic world was quite turbulent. Some time ago, even Hades had directly made an appearance with the sole purpose of meeting Noah, a talent that Eurelia had praised endlessly. If Noah were to go out and show his face again, Makarov was worried that Noah would be targeted by others. Noah didn't know if it was because he saw Makarov's worry, but he smiled slightly. Grandpa, you don't have to worry. Since there are 4 big guilds attacking together, and Alusha is also there, then I won't do anything unless it's necessary. If Alusha and the others can solve it, then I'll just go and watch the show. If not, then I'll be there and be a safeguard. After saying that, Noah narrowed his eyes. Moreover, since the opponent is one of the 3 dark guilds of the Baram Alliance, then the people in the Oration Cease should more or less have information about the Grimoire Heart. If it's possible, I want to go there. Hearing Noah's words, how could everyone not understand Noah's plan? Could it be? Mira asked with some uncertainty. Noah, you want to get information about Grimoire Heart from Oration Cease? That's right. Noah didn't hide his thoughts and said bluntly. Hades once said that he would destroy Fairy Tale. Then, sooner or later, we will have to face that enemy. Reaching out a hand and holding it tightly, Noah's smile became slightly cold. I'd like to see what qualifications he has to say this. Last time, one of the reasons why Noah left Fairy Tale and left this world was to continue looking for world fragments. The second reason was because Hades' words had caused her to feel a sense of crisis. She urgently wanted to increase her strength to protect her Fairy Tale and protect her home. Now, compared to the time when he fought with Hades, Noah lacked crush magic and the soul weapon called Blaze. However, compared to that time, the current Noah was only stronger. Even though he had just returned to this world and hadn't stayed for a full month, so he couldn't use his authority, for the time being, Noah still had the Gate of Babylon, the Demon Slayer, and the LV, for level of Grace, so he couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Now, Noah was confident that even if he didn't use Gate of Babylon, magic, he could easily kill Hades with just his LV, for ability value and the power of Demon Slayer. That's right. Not defeat, but kill. After all, Noah still had the curse resistance. Hades' magic was no longer effective against Noah. And without magic, a magic shooter was equivalent to a tiger that had its teeth and claws pulled out and had been drugged. It could only be slaughtered. Since this was the case, Noah wouldn't let Hades secretly have ideas about Fairy Tale. If there was a chance, Noah would definitely kill Hades. Moreover, this time, in the alliance of the 4 major guilds, there was still the existence of Cat's Shelter. Noah wanted to know how Wendy was doing now. Makarov didn't know the reason behind it. He thought that Noah only wanted to inquire about Hades and Grimoire Heart. After pondering for a moment, he nodded. That's good. Since President Precto. No, it should be said that Hades has always been hostile towards Fairy Tale, then we will have to face them sooner or later. If we can get some information, then it will be beneficial for us. What he meant was that Makarov agreed to Noah's participation. Good. Gray suddenly became excited. With Noah and Alusha, then there will be no mistakes. That's great. Lucy also breathed a sigh of relief. With Noah, it will definitely be much smoother. There's no need for Noah to do anything. Even Alusha doesn't need to do anything. I alone will be enough. Naz boasted shamelessly. I must beat up one of the 3 major dark guilds. Don't talk nonsense. Alusha fiercely knocked Naz's head. Noah still has other quests to do. If possible, it would be best if we can take care of the crusade quests. Love. Habby flew into the air and danced with joy. Anyway, with Noah here, at least we won't be eaten. Why would we be eaten? Lucy ridiculed. Even if it's a dark guild, they won't eat people, right? Lucy. Habby squinted his eyes and looked at Lucy with disdain. You really don't understand the romance of men. No, I've also never heard of the romance of men eating people. Lucy facepalmed. By the way, didn't you say you were a cat? Now you're a human? Seeing that the atmosphere was gradually becoming cheerful again, Noah couldn't help but laugh. It was at this time that Noah felt one of his hands being tightly hugged. Big brother Noah. Lisanna seemed to have forgotten her anger from before and worriedly said. Are you okay? Don't worry. Noah gently stroked Lisanna's head and comforted her. It's not like you don't know my strength. Nothing will happen. Then remember to be careful. Lisanna still seemed a little worried. Don't force yourself. Lisanna is right. Mira came to Noah's other side and hugged Noah's hand as well. She looked at Noah with ripples in her eyes. Don't force yourself. Feeling his 2 fiancés hugging his arms so tightly, it was as if they were trying to turn their worries into strength so that Noah could feel it clearly. Unable to free his hands, Noah could only nod heavily at Mira and Lisanna. Mira and Lisanna didn't know the extent of Noah's strength. But even if they knew, the 2 girls would still be worried. After all, Noah's position in their hearts was so important that even a short moment of loss would be unbearable. So, no matter how powerful Noah was, as Noah's current lover and future family, both Mira and Lisanna would still be worried when it was time to do so. Realizing this, Noah withdrew his hands and hugged the 2 girls tightly. Mira and Lisanna immediately hugged him back. Instantly, the 3 of them were immersed in the warmth. Chapter 1039. The sky was blue, and there were no clouds in sight. Compared to the dark clouds and heavy rain yesterday, it was simply the opposite of the extreme. Whoosh! At a certain moment, accompanied by a sharp sound of breaking through the air, an extremely gorgeous flying ship suddenly shot out from the other side, leaving behind 2 long jets of light. Like a stream of light flashing through the sky, it cut through the sky at an extremely fast speed, flying to the other side of the distant horizon. Taking a closer look, it turned out to be a flying ship made of bright gold and emerald gems. There was a throne in the center. It looked like a small plane, but it was thousands or tens of thousands of times more gorgeous than an ordinary plane. And on this extremely gorgeous airship, there were many figures. It was the fairy tale team composed of Noah, Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, and Hubby. They were about to participate in the crusade against the 6 demon generals. Oration cease. Undoubtedly, the airship was flying at a speed that could even match that of a fighter jet. Noah and his party, who were riding on the gorgeous airship, didn't feel any strong pressure or wind at all. It was as if they were on flat ground. Only their hair was fluttering in the wind, which looked incredible. In fact, Alusha, Lucy, and Gray were really in a state of disbelief. Alusha was standing on the edge of the airship, looking down. What she saw was a terrifying height that almost made her dizzy and the scenery that was flying backward at a rapid speed, which made Alusha's emotions somewhat stirred. To travel at such a speed, we are not affected in the slightest. This is too inconceivable. Are these really all gold and gems? Lucy, on the other hand, was touching and looking left and right. Looking at the dazzling gold and emeralds that made up the entire airship, she was completely stunned. How rich must they be to be so extravagant? Love. Even hubby was a little surprised. Naz. Come and see. It's all gold and gems. However, Nazi, who had no idea what to do with transportation, couldn't care less about it. He lay on the ground, and his whole face was pale. He looked like he wanted to vomit but couldn't. He kept groaning. Eyes are rolling, really useless. Gray glanced at Naz, then he looked in the direction of the throne. But, where did you get such an extravagant and unbelievable thing? Hearing that, Noah, who was sitting on the throne and looking at the performance of Alusha, Lucy, Naz, Gray, and hubby, shrugged and smiled without saying a word. It's not that Noah didn't want to explain, but it was too troublesome to explain. Because this incredible airship was one of the many treasures in Noah's treasure house. Vimanas. It was recorded in the two major narrative poems of ancient India, Ramayana and Mahabharata. It only existed in ancient Indian myths and legends. It had the ability to travel in the sky. It had a strong body like a huge bird. Most of the materials were pure gold and precious gems. It was driven by solar energy generated by mercury-driven sun crystals. It could ignore the laws of physics and fly at high speed. To put it simply, this was a treasure that was no different from a fighter jet. Riding on this treasure, not only could it fly freely in the sky, but it could also move freely in the boundless ocean. Even on this airship, it was equipped with various treasure systems and even equipped with excellent weapons such as ancient nuclear warheads. It had extremely powerful attack power. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to call this airship treasure named Vimanas a fighter jet. Of course, in terms of practicality and destructive power, this Vimanas was far stronger than the average fighter jet. However, Noah wasn't using it for battle at this moment. He was only using it for traveling. It had only been less than an hour since they departed from Fairy Tale. An hour ago, Alusha and the others who had packed their luggage found Noah. They discussed with Noah about what kind of transportation they should use to get to the rendezvous point. Then, there was no then. In the end, Noah took out the Vimanas. Alusha and the others were dumbstruck. He invited everyone on board and rushed to the rendezvous point as fast as possible. Taking out the map, Noah looked at the rendezvous point marked by Makarov. It was the place marked with a cross on the map. He said to Alusha, "This rendezvous point seems to be prepared by the Blue Pegasus, right? It seems to be a villa owned by the guild leader of the Blue Pegasus." Alusha walked over and laid on Noah's body without any scruples. She used her heavily armored hand to point at the area marked with a cross on the map. This area is all forest. We also call it the Sea of Trees. It is said that Oration Cease is active in this area. The guild leader of the Blue Pegasus happens to have a villa in this Sea of Trees, so he provided it for us to use. So, the people of the Blue Pegasus should be there in advance to prepare, right? Gray was half naked. He put his hands in his pockets and walked towards Noah and Alusha. Originally, the rendezvous time was supposed to be in the afternoon, but with our current speed, we should be there soon, right? By the way, what kind of people will the other three guilds send? Lucy reluctantly withdrew her gaze from the gold and gems that made up the airship and asked everyone. Since our guild even sent Noah and Alusha, then the people from the other three guilds should also be very powerful, right? After all, no matter which one it is, they are all famous guilds in Fiori. Gray nodded in agreement. Blue Pegasus and Lamia Scale both have very powerful sorcerers. Especially Lamia Scale, there are even people who are stronger than Alusha. Stronger than Alusha? Lucy's eyes widened. No way, right? Being in the same team as Alusha, Lucy already had a certain understanding of Alusha's strength. Frankly speaking, in Lucy's opinion, it could not be said that there were no sorcerers who could be stronger than Alusha. But so far, Lucy had not seen many of them with her own eyes. Therefore, in Lucy's opinion, the fact that there were sorcerers who were stronger than Alusha in other guilds was very surprising in itself. There are many people who are stronger than me, Lucy. Don't underestimate the other guilds, Elusha said methodically. Whether it's Blue Pegasus or Lamia Scale, they both have very powerful sorcerers. Although, I also think that it's already very good for the other guilds to have one sorcerer who is stronger than you. Gray scratched his head. But I don't seem to have heard of any strong sorcerers in Cat Shelter. Hearing Gray's words, Noah reacted a little. Right at this moment, Hubby suddenly yelled in a panic in front of him. Everyone! Look in front! Noah and the others turned their heads and looked in front. They were immediately stunned. They saw that on the distant horizon in front of them, a dark shadow was gradually expanding. No. It wasn't expanding. It was the airship that was approaching at an extremely fast speed. Whoa! Lucy and Hubby both screamed out in shock. We're going to hit it. Noah reacted and hurriedly controlled the airship. Whoosh! At the critical moment, the extremely gorgeous flying ship suddenly made an extremely thrilling arc, brushing past the edge of the black shadow, and rushed higher into the sky. Chapter 1040. Whoosh! Amidst the extremely sharp sound of the wind, the golden airship named Vimanas seemed to intend to rush out of the universe. It soared into the sky in a vertical manner, causing the surrounding air to swirl up like a violent gale. Ah! On the Vimanas, except for Noah, who was sitting on the throne, Elusha, Lucy, Gray, and Hubby, who were originally standing there casually, were almost thrown off by the airship that suddenly changed direction and soared vertically into the sky, causing them to let out screams. Fortunately, Elusha and Gray were not ordinary people. When the Vimanas soared vertically into the sky, they immediately reacted and laid down on the deck, tightly grabbing onto some of the protruding edges, preventing them from being thrown off. Naz! Hubby immediately spread out a pair of wings and flew directly onto the Vimanas, grabbing onto the defenseless Naz. However, Hubby just happened to grab onto Naz's scarf, causing Naz, who was already pale due to the transportation, to turn ashen, and he almost foamed at the mouth. Ah! Only Lucy, whose physical ability was not much better than an ordinary girl, was unable to react in time. Her feet had already left the Vimana's deck, and she screamed as she fell downwards. Lucy! Elusha and Gray exclaimed at the same time. Why am I the only one? Lucy, on the other hand, let out a tearless cry. Her whole body flopped a few times as if she was swimming in water. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Pa! Just as Lucy was about to fall off the Vimana's deck and be thrown off, a hand suddenly reached out from the throne and grabbed onto Lucy's hand. Lucy, who thought she was completely done for, raised her head and looked at Noah, who was sitting on the throne, tightly grabbing onto her hand, and cried out. Noah! Noah did not have the spare energy to respond to Lucy's words. He was trying his best to control the Vimanas, making it turn around. Whoosh! In the sky, the golden airship drew a perfect arc, and from a vertical state, it suddenly turned around, causing friction with the air, and in the whistling sound of the wind, it turned straight. After that, the golden airship named Vimanas slowly came to a stop and hovered in mid-air, no longer moving. Ha! 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 Elusha, Gray, Naz, and Hubby all sat on the ground in an instant, as if they had just survived a disaster, and gasped for breath. Noah also got up from the throne, and placed Lucy, who was in his arms, on the deck, and let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, it was a close call. There was almost a traffic accident in the sky. Lucy also had some lingering fear, patting her full chest, and with some sweat on her delicate face, she forced a smile at Noah. Thank you, Noah. Don't thank me. Noah said with a bitter smile. The one who almost made you fall was me. That's not your fault. Lucy waved her hand and shook her head, then complained. It's all that black shadow's fault. Then what is it? Gray stood up with difficulty, his face still a little ugly. It almost got us killed. After Gray said this, the rest of the people came to their senses, and all of them gathered at the edge of the Vimanas, looking down. Because the Vimanas had ascended vertically for quite a distance, everyone could only see a black shadow hovering in the sky below. They were simply unable to see its body clearly. Thus, Noah controlled the Vimanas, and gradually lowered its altitude. However, just as Noah and the rest were gradually able to see the true face of the black shadow, a voice suddenly resounded, as if it was amplified by a microphone, and suddenly resounded in the sky. Visitors on an unknown magic airship, please report your name. If you don't tell us your origin, we will most likely treat you as an enemy and shoot you down. Hearing this voice, Noah's eyes flashed. Elisha, Lucy, Gray, and the rest were shocked, and then they reacted. There's someone on that black shadow? Just as this thought surfaced in their minds, on the gradually descending Vimanas, everyone was finally able to see the full appearance of the black shadow below. It was actually a warship that was built in the shape of a horse, as if it was a Pegasus flying in the sky. Moreover, it was a warship that had the ability to fly. That is. Elisha, Lucy, and Gray were all surprised. Magic explosive airship. Magic explosive airship. Noah was slightly startled, and then he remembered. Magic explosive airship. Simply put, it was a type of magic airship that had the ability to drop bombs in the air. This type of airship not only had the ability to fly, but was also equipped with powerful magic weapons. It was a tool that could be used in the military. In other words, it was a warship that had the same function as the Vimanas. A Pegasus-shaped magic explosive airship. Elisha seemed to have thought of something. Could it be Christina of the Blue Pegasus? Coincidentally, Noah and Gray also thought of the same thing. Only Lucy had a confused look on her face. Christina? What's that? Lucy, haven't you heard of it? Hubby grabbed Naz's collar and said while flying in the air. Christina is a magic explosive airship of the Blue Pegasus. That guild is most famous in the Fiori Kingdom for having such a magic explosive airship. Huh? Lucy exclaimed in surprise. In other words, the thing that almost caused us to have a traffic accident in the sky was the Blue Pegasus. Noah couldn't help but laugh out loud. But, it's not an enemy. Let's go down. Elisha made a decisive decision. Now, the allied forces of the 4 major guilds are gathering. The Dark Guild of the Baram Alliance is also active nearby. If we appear here on an unknown flying tool, it's very likely that the Blue Pegasus will attack us. Everyone immediately nodded. The Vimanas that was floating in the air trembled, and 2 jets of light shot out from its back. With a spin, it descended towards the magic explosive airship named Christina. Noah only stopped the Vimanas when it was less than 10 meters above the magic explosive airship. Noah, Elisha, and Gray looked at each other. Then, without any hesitation, they jumped down towards the deck of the magic explosive airship. Hubby grabbed Naz's scarf. He didn't care about Naz's face becoming more and more green, and even started to turn white. He flapped his wings and flew down. Lucy, who was the only one left, secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva and shouted in despair. I don't care anymore. Lucy threw caution to the wind and jumped down. Unlike Noah's Vimanas, the deck of the magic explosive airship named Christina was made of wood. After jumping down from the sky, Noah and the others steadily landed on the deck. They stepped on the wooden floor and looked around. Ah dash! A scream came from above. Hearing the scream, Noah almost subconsciously raised his head and looked up. In the end, he saw a beautiful scene. At the same time, Lucy, who fell from the sky, hit the ground while screaming. However, she didn't care about the pain. She covered her skirt and looked at Noah with a red face. You saw it? Hearing this, Noah could only laugh dryly. Q dash. At this moment, a cold wind started to blow. Chapter 1041. A gust of cold wind suddenly rolled up without any warning, carrying a violent snowstorm. Like a wave, it suddenly shrouded Noah and his party who landed on the deck. It was like a tornado made of wind and snow was violently attacking in the direction of Noah and his party. Danger! Elusha reacted first. With a leap, she protected Lucy, Habby, and Naz, who was still dizzy, behind her. Gray simply took a step forward. Instead of retreating, he charged forward. His body suddenly surged with a burst of cold air that was even denser than the ice and snow tornado. Under Gray's control, it gathered in his hand. Even if it's snow, freeze it for me. In Gray's shout, the amazing coldness burst out from his raised palm, turning into bursts of turbulence that swept towards the violent snowstorm. Kacha kacha kacha, suddenly, the snowstorm swept by the cold air from Gray's hand began to freeze. After a while, it condensed into ice dregs and fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, Noah, who was guarding at the back, was surprised. Gray actually froze the snowstorm. Moreover, looking at the degree of magic power surging around Gray's body like a storm, it was clearly stronger than before. It seems that in the month when Noah left this world, Gray seems to have been tempered in the long crusade mission like Elusha and become stronger than before. If this continues, it is estimated that in another 1 or 2 years, Gray will definitely be able to reach the level of an S-rank archmage, right? Obviously, when Noah didn't know, Gray was also growing smoothly in his own way. And it was definitely not just Gray. Including Naz, the rest of the friends in Fairy Tale must have had their own growth. This fact was told to Noah. He was not the only one who was constantly getting stronger. The person who attacked Noah and the others didn't seem to expect this result and exclaimed in surprise. You actually froze my snow?" Noah and his party immediately raised their eyes and looked ahead. There, a figure quietly appeared without them knowing. He also stretched out a hand in the direction of Noah and others, and a tornado mixed with snowflakes was rolling in his hand. Needless to say, it was this person who had just attacked Noah and others. Gray was about to step forward, but he was stopped by Noah. Looking at the figure who stretched out his hand and launched an attack, Noah suddenly spoke. Could it be that this is how the Blue Pegasus entertains its guests? As soon as his voice fell. This is really rude. With such a sentence, 2 other figures also quietly appeared in front of the deck and stood together with the previous figure. As Gray withdrew his magic, the ice shards that fell on the ground suddenly evaporated, making a strange sound and slowly disappearing. In front of them, the 3 figures who had gathered together walked out of the shadows and appeared in front of Noah and the others. They were 3 rather young teenagers. "Hello." The young man standing in the middle bent down, as if inviting a woman to dance, appearing very polite. "I am Xiang of Blue Pegasus. Please allow me to introduce myself." The short young man standing on the left also bowed. "I am Ivan of Blue Pegasus. Although you came uninvited, we still have to give you a little welcome." The dark-skinned young man standing on the right crossed his arms, but his movements did not lose their elegance, and said with closed eyes, "I am Lotus of Blue Pegasus." The 3 Blue Pegasus magic shooters who introduced themselves one by one, as if they were acting in a stage play, and as if acting cool was an instinct, they simultaneously revealed a handsome smile to Noah and the others. It had to be said that these 3 Blue Pegasus magic shooters indeed had good looks. Although their movements seemed to have some unnecessary postures, there was a kind of sparkling feeling. It was believed that some pure and innocent girls would be very fond of this type of man, right? For example, Lucy. So handsome. Lucy couldn't help but murmur, and then immediately reacted. She shook her head and stammered to the 3 Blue Pegasus magic shooters. Why did you attack us?" The one who answered Lucy's question was not the 3 Blue Pegasus magic shooters, but Elusha, who was protecting Lucy behind her. This is also something that can't be helped. If it were me, and someone suddenly appeared on my guild's magic explosive airship, I would also take down the opponent first. Elusha looked straight ahead. Am I right? Oh. The young man named Xiang looked at Elusha. Are you Elusha Shukalito of Fairy Queen? Elusha Shukalito? Ivan's eyes lit up. Fairy Tales, Fairy Queen? So that's how it is, you are Fairy Queen? The young man who called himself Lotus also cast his gaze on Alusha, and then swept his gaze over the others. In other words, you are the magic shooters of fairy tale? Under Lotus's inquiry, Alusha did not speak, but turned her gaze to Noah, who was quietly watching. Noticing Alusha's gaze, Noah nodded and also did not speak. He just raised his right hand, exposing the back of his hand in front of the 3 blue Pegasus magic shooters. Noah's hands were branded with an imprint on the back of each hand. The back of his left hand was branded with the proof of the contract with Aster, the elven imprint. The back of his right hand was branded with the fairy tale guild emblem. Seeing Noah's action, Alusha, Gray, and Lucy understood one after another. Immediately, Alusha slightly undid the shoulder armor on her left arm, exposing the dark blue guild emblem branded not far from her shoulder. Gray pointed to the guild emblem branded on his chest. Like Noah, Lucy also raised her right hand, revealing the emblem branded on the same position as Noah's. Seeing this, Xiang, Ivan, and Lotus looked at each other. It seems that you are indeed members of Fairy Tale. However, is that magic floating airship also a property of your guild? Echo extended his hand and pointed at the golden airship hovering in the sky. We've never heard of such a thing in Fairy Tale, have we? Hearing Xiang's words, Noah smiled faintly. That is my personal item, it has nothing to do with Fairy Tale. After that, Noah raised a hand that a huge golden ripple appeared in front of Vimana's and rippled out. The airship, which was made of bright gold and emerald gems, immediately vibrated and flew toward the golden ripples. In the next second, as if it had entered water, it stirred up a circle of ripples and entered the golden ripples, disappearing without a trace. At this time, Noah stepped forward and said to the 3 sorcerers of Blue Pegasus. Sorry, we came a little early, can you let us see your person in charge first? Not knowing if it was because they were shocked by Noah's inconceivable means, Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan nodded at the same time, retreated to the shadows, and opened a door on the deck. Please come this way, Lord Iya is waiting for you inside. Noah nodded. However, at the side, Alusha's expression suddenly froze. Iya? Chapter 1042. Noah, who was about to follow the 3 magic shooters from Blue Pegasus into the inner room, noticed that something was wrong with Alusha. Alusha? Noah asked doubtfully. What's wrong with you? I'm fine. Although Alusha said that, she couldn't adjust her stiff face no matter what. In the end, she even began to break out in cold sweat. Gray, Lucy, and even Nazi, who was still dizzy, twitched their mouths because of Alusha's behavior, and they couldn't help but take a step back. Nah. Lucy's mouth twitched again and again, and she also broke out in cold sweat. Alusha isn't afraid, is she? You. What are you talking about? Gray said with a smile, but that smile was extremely stiff. That's Alusha, the Alusha who is not afraid of anything, how can she be afraid? However, as if she wanted to make the final rejection of Gray's extremely reluctant words, Alusha's body began to tremble. This time, even Gray and Lucy were afraid. As long as one was a member of Fairy Tale, it was impossible for them not to know how ferocious Alusha was. Just like what Gray said, in the past, it was only others who were afraid of Alusha. When was it Alusha's turn to be afraid of others? Nazi and Gray were scared to death of Alusha, and even Lucy understood the fierce and terrifying side of Alusha's inner heart after a long time of getting along with her. Even if they usually talked and laughed, once Alusha got angry, the only one who ran the fastest was Lucy. However, that fierce and terrifying Alusha was trembling at this moment. It was obvious that she was afraid of something. Even Noah couldn't help but be concerned about Alusha's reaction. At that moment, Noah stretched out a hand and put it on Alusha's shoulder, and said in a deep voice while exerting a little force. Alusha, what's wrong? Not sure if it was Noah's voice that woke up Alusha, who was immersed in fear, but Alusha turned her head with a stiff neck and looked at Noah. Immediately, she took a slow breath and grabbed Noah's hand. Sorry, Noah, I know you just want to be a safeguard by our side, and you have more important tasks, but I have to face one night, please spare me. Hearing this, Noah understood. Elisha was actually afraid of the person called One Night. Then, what is the origin of that one night? Lucy asked in a trembling voice. Even Elisha is afraid of him? No way. Grace swallowed a mouthful of saliva. I've never heard of anyone more terrifying than Elisha in the Blue Pegasus. Naz, I'm so scared. Habby almost cried and tugged at Naz's scarf. I want to go back. Ugh. Naz, whose face was getting more and more pale, could only make a soft sound. I saw the kingdom of heaven. Only Noah, while feeling puzzled, also became somewhat serious. Who is that person, One Night? He. Elisha didn't know whether it was because she didn't dare to comment or because she didn't know how to comment. After stuttering for a long time, she took a deep breath. As a magic shooter, I admit that he is indeed quite outstanding, but as a human, I think I can't accept someone like him biologically. The inexplicable speech from Elisha made Noah and the others look at each other, and at the same time, they were even more puzzled. What the hell is this? In short, since One Night is here, you will understand when you see him. Elisha rubbed her temples as if she had a headache. But, if possible, Noah, later on, if necessary, you must make a move, don't let him pester me. After leaving such a sentence, Elisha mustered up her courage and walked forward. She looked like a soldier who was ready to see blood on the battlefield. Noah was really starting to be curious. In the Blue Pegasus, there was actually a magic shooter who could make Elisha show such an expression and performance. It seemed that the people sent by the Blue Pegasus to join the alliance were a bit amazing. Noah, who was holding this thought, didn't know. 3 minutes later, he realized how foolish and naive he was at this time. Naive to the point that Noah wanted to strangle himself at this time. Under the lead of the 3 magic shooters of the Blue Pegasus, Noah and the others walked into the interior of the magic explosive airship named Christina and came to a room that looked like a bar. After walking in front, Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan entered the room. Their attitude immediately changed from pretentious to respectful. They bowed in the direction of the bar and saluted. Lord One Night, the people from Fairy Tale are here. After saying that, a voice sounded. Fairy Tale? It was a voice that only a mature man with a very magnetic and charismatic voice could have. That magic airship just now belongs to Fairy Tale? Accompanied by such a voice, from the direction of the bar, an unusually tall and handsome figure holding a wine glass full of red wine walked out. Seeing that figure, Elisha, who had previously mustered up a lot of courage, directly twitched the corner of her eyes. Her entire delicate body stiffened, and she couldn't move at all. Seeing Elisha like this, Gray and Lucy's hearts began to beat faster, and they stared at the figure closely. That's the person that even Elisha is afraid of? Gray and Lucy were completely nervous. Even Noah narrowed his eyes slightly, watching the figure slowly walking out of the darkness. However, as time passed and the figure got closer and closer, Noah, Gray, and Lucy all felt that something was wrong. Because the figure of the figure was actually shrinking bit by bit. In the end, it even became as short as a child. At this time, Noah noticed. That figure only looked tall and handsome under the effect of the light. Then, as the figure got closer, the effect of the light began to disappear. In the next moment, the owner of the short figure was exposed in front of Noah and the others. Oh! With an extremely magnetic and charming voice, the owner of the voice was a man who was less than 1.5 meters tall. His body was bloated, and he had a face that was no different from a pancake. His face was covered in pores, and his facial features were pieced together to create a face that made people despair. Isn't this Miss Elisha? This is truly a meeting of fate. Gray and Lucy, who originally thought that the other party was a big shot because of Elisha's reaction, looked at the ugly man who posed in a pose that he thought was very handsome. But now, their faces were twisted. Not to mention Gray and Lucy, even Noah's eyes couldn't help but almost pop out of their sockets. The previous curiosity and expectation combined with the huge gap at this moment, the cruel scene called reality made his heart clench and his head almost explode. Under such circumstances, the other party actually cast his gaze in the direction of Noah. Then, he opened his big nostrils and sniffed Noah's body. Oh! This strange smell. Could it be that you are? Noah didn't hear the rest of the words. Noah could not hold himself back at all when he saw the other party widening his nostrils and moving his unique face closer to Noah's body and sniffing him bit by bit. So, Noah exploded. Who? Without any hesitation, Noah spun around and threw out a kick. Amidst a strong gust of wind, he kicked out heavily. Bang! Amidst a resounding muffled sound, Noah's foot directly sunk into Ye's face that was filled with pores and beard, deeply sinking in that unique face. Man! With a peculiar catchphrase, he flew out in one night. Chapter 1043. It had to be said that before Noah made his move, no one present was able to react in time. When everyone present began to react, Ie was already sent flying by Noah's heavy kick. His bloated body bounced on the ground several times like a rubber ball before crashing into a wall, causing the wall to crack. Master Ie. The three handsome archmages from the Blue Pegasus were shocked and immediately glared at Noah's direction. How dare you attack our senior Ie? How dare you send our teacher Ie flying? How dare you do such a thing to our boss Ie? The three archmages from the Blue Pegasus spoke in unison, leaving Lucy speechless. Just a moment ago, they were calling him master, and now, they were calling him senior, teacher, and boss. Is that the person in charge of you? Noah's face was ashen as he showed a fake smile to Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan. So the person in charge of the Blue Pegasus has a hobby of sniffing people he just met? That's not a hobby, Xiang corrected him righteously. That's just Senior Ye's way of greeting people. A way of greeting people? Gray and Lucy's eyelids began to twitch. As archmages who had to travel all over the continent all day to carry out missions, they had seen many ways of greeting people. However, whether it was Gray or Lucy, they could say with absolute certainty that no one would use such a way of greeting people. Not to mention, the person who used such a way of greeting people had a very unique face. Not to mention Noah, it was believed that if it were anyone else, if they were sniffed by a knight's big nostrils as soon as they met, they would definitely act like Noah and directly attack. It was no longer a matter of disgust, but a conditioned reflex of the body. At this moment, Ie, who was embedded in the wall with his arms and legs spread out, pulled his head out of the wall, turned his head, and reprimanded the three handsome archmages from the Blue Pegasus. Don't yell at our guests. But, Teacher Ie, Ivan said with some indignation. He hit you. He was the one who hit me first. Lotus put her hands in her pocket, looking very arrogant. It's fine if he was hit by a woman, but the other party is a man. Boss Ie, we can't just let it go. Hearing this, the members of Fairy Tale really wanted to chime in on the conversation. Just let it go when he was hit by a woman? How could he be so immoral? On the contrary, Ie acted as if nothing had happened. He straightened his collar and said in a serious tone. Don't say that. Maybe that's his way of greeting. We can't be so rude. Hearing this, Noah almost couldn't control his body and fell to the ground. It's fine if he looks so unique, but if even his personality and thoughts are so unique, it's no wonder he can create such a character. The world is really big, and there are all kinds of strange things. Just as this thought appeared in Noah's mind, Ie stared at Noah and spoke in a voice that didn't match his appearance at all. Besides, if that Noah doll really wanted to hit me, I wouldn't be able to stand up. Noah doll? Xiang, Lian, and Ivan were stunned at the same time, and then they all looked at Noah in surprise. He's that Noah doll? In this world, Noah was considered to be quite famous. There were 3 reasons. One of the reasons was because Noah was Makarov's grandson. As a senior among the 10 great Saint Magus masters, it was likely that no one would not recognize the fairy tale Makarov. As the grandson of Makarov, Noah was destined to be famous when he inherited the surname of Dole. The other reason was a piece of news that had recently spread throughout the entire continent. The guild leader of the Phantom Lord, who was once on equal footing with Fairy Tail and had the ability to compete with Fairy Tail for the position of the #1 guild in the Kingdom of Fiore, was killed by Noah. Another one of the 10 Saint Magi, Joseph, had been killed by Noah. To be more precise, it was the news that the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph, was killed by a golden wolf under Noah's command. This news had long been known to everyone. At that time, Noah was even called by the council because of this matter. One could only imagine how big of a commotion this matter had become. As a result, Noah's reputation was even greater. Then, there was another reason. That famous cover girl, the fiancée of Mira Jenny Strauss? Mira looked at Noah with a scrutinizing gaze. I didn't expect it to be such a man. If it was said that Makarov, who was one of the 10 great Saint Magus masters, as long as he was a mage, he would definitely know about him. Mira's reputation was something that even ordinary civilians had to know about. There was no other reason. In this world, Mira had always been at the top of various magazine covers and rankings to evaluate women's charm. She had never fallen to second place. Therefore, in terms of popularity, Mira was definitely greater than any of the 10 great Saint Magus masters. She was simply like a national idol. Among the single and even married men, at least 80% of them were intoxicated by Mira's beauty. Even women had to fall in front of Mira's popularity. To put it bluntly, Mira was another meaning of Liena Subble. When such a popular idol got married to Noah 1 or 2 months ago, on the mainland, it was unknown how many people cried directly. As a result, even if Noah didn't want to be famous, it would be difficult. Especially for pretentious handsome men like Mira, Lien, and Ivan, a beautiful girl that they couldn't help but praise, it was difficult for them not to know about the existence of Noah. Seeing that the 3 handsome mages of the Blue Pegasus were looking at him with scrutinizing and envious eyes, Noah's eyebrows slightly raised, and then he cast his gaze on Iya. You're called Iya, right? That's right. Iya stood on tiptoe as if dancing, making a narcissistic posture. I exist for thousands of girls, Iya. Why don't I just call you Iya? Noah resisted the urge to turn around and leave as he asked. How's the gathering of the Alliance? When it came to business, Iya's face became serious. We are now on our way to the gathering point. Because we encountered an unknown magic airship on the way, we stopped. But we didn't expect it to be the airship of the Fairy Tail. Since you, as the host, haven't arrived yet, that means that the people from the other 2 guilds haven't arrived yet, right? Noah said. If possible, I hope we can gather as soon as possible to complete the mission. As soon as possible? Iya was stunned. Is there a need to be so anxious? This time, we don't only have the mission to suppress the Baram Alliance's Dark Guild, we also have another mission to complete. Noah shook his head. So, if possible, I hope we can start a bit earlier. Is that so? Yi rubbed his wide chin and nodded. Although I'm curious about the other mission, since you said so, then we'll hurry over as soon as possible. After saying that, Iya ordered Mira, Lien, and Ivan. From now on, go full speed ahead. Yes. Mira, Lien, and Ivan stood at attention and rushed out of the room. Thus, the magic explosive airship named Christina immediately sped up and flew toward the gathering point of the Allied forces. Chapter 1044. To be honest, in terms of speed, Blue Pegasus's magic explosive airship was extremely slow compared to Noah's Vimanas. If one had to make an analogy, if one were to compare Noah's Vimanas to an airplane, then even if Blue Pegasus's magic explosive airship could fly, its speed would be about the same as a normal horse carriage. Therefore, if one's goal was to rush for time, then it would be better to take the Vimanas instead of the Blue Pegasus magic explosive airship. However, Noah's goal was not to rush for time, but to quickly gather the allied forces of the 4 major guilds so that they could take action against Oration Cease. Near the Sea of Trees where the 6th demon general, Oration Cease, was active, there was the villa of the Blue Pegasus, President. That was the gathering point of the allied forces of the 4 major guilds. As the host, the Blue Pegasus obviously had to arrive at the rendezvous point in advance to make some preparations. Furthermore, this time, because Blue Pegasus was the one who discovered the 6 demon generals' activities in time, Blue Pegasus also had some information about the 6 demon generals' oration cease. Therefore, it was reasonable for the Blue Pegasus to arrive at the rendezvous point ahead of time. Because Noah's group had directly taken the Vimanas to travel, while the Blue Pegasus was still rushing to the rendezvous point, Noah's group had caught up with the Blue Pegasus from behind. In other words, unless the other 2 guilds were like Noah and had extraordinary means of transportation. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to be faster than the Blue Pegasus. So, even if you're anxious now, if the people from the other 2 guilds haven't arrived yet, then the mission can't start. On Christina's deck, one knight, who was wearing a white suit but could not hide his short and bloated figure, nor could it hide his extremely unique face, posed strangely in a self-proclaimed handsome manner and pointed in Alusha's direction. If Miss Alusha is really bored, why don't you admire the fragrance of the sky with me? I refuse. Alusha felt goosebumps all over her body. She trembled violently and shouted at one knight as if she could not bear it. Besides, there's no fragrance in the sky, and there's no way to admire the fragrance. You've got it all wrong. Well, let's not care about those trivial details. One knight flipped his hair and twitched his huge nostrils in Alusha's direction. Why don't you let me admire your fragrance? As one knight said this, he sniffed in Alusha's direction with his huge nostrils, just like when he was talking to Noah. Alusha's body trembled, and she threw a punch without any hesitation. Don't come near me. The cannonball-like fist hit one knight's huge nostrils with a bang. Man! 2 streams of blood suddenly spurted out of one knight's nostrils, and his entire body flew out in a perfect parabola. Like a large piece of trash, he smashed onto the deck not far away. After moving a few times, he calmed down. Ha! Ha! Alusha panted heavily with a look of lingering fear. Seeing this scene with their own eyes, Gray and Lucy looked at each other and smiled at the same time. Sure enough. Gray's expression was stiff. Alusha is more terrifying, I feel the same. Lucy glanced at one knight lying on the deck, and her delicate body trembled violently. However, I can understand why Alusha is afraid of that person, love. Even Habby became a little weak and said this. I heard that when the major guilds gathered in the past, Alusha went with the president and saw one knight there. One knight seems to have fallen in love with Alusha at first sight since then, and he has been pestering Alusha. In other words, Ia has taken a liking to Alusha. Gray looked at one knight strangely, and there was a trace of pity in his eyes. He actually likes Alusha, he really doesn't want to live anymore. Ahahaha. Lucy laughed dryly and didn't say anything. In fact, from appearance alone, Alusha was definitely the top of the top, a real beauty. Otherwise, Alusha wouldn't enjoy the title of Fairy Queen. However, Alusha's character was quite tough and extremely violent. If it was an ordinary person, she would be violent. But for someone as powerful as Alusha, once she was violent, the scene was simply too horrible to look at. It was also for this reason that so far, those who pursued Alusha have all hit a wall. And it was the kind that hit hard. Knowing the reason, coupled with his extreme fear of Alusha, it was no wonder that Gray would make such a statement. On the side, Noah, who heard the conversation between the group of people, could only secretly feel a burst of laughter in his heart. Indeed, whether it was one knight's appearance, personality, or values, there was a taste that people didn't dare to compliment. However, Alusha also said that in terms of magic, one knight was a great magic shooter. In this regard, Noah was still looking forward to it. Just as the group of people were making a ruckus, a voice interrupted everyone's playfulness. Master One Knight. Echo came out of the driver's cabin. When he was about to say something, he saw one knight lying on the ground and exclaimed. What's wrong with you? As soon as Echo's voice sounded, one knight, who was lying on the ground without moving, jumped up and made a post. I'm fine. Look at you in a hurry, is there something wrong? Yes. A voice rang out and stood at attention. Like a messenger, he spoke respectfully. Just now, the guild sent a message saying that one of the other 2 guilds has arrived at the rendezvous point ahead of time. What? One knight raised his eyebrows. The other guilds have already arrived at the rendezvous point? Yes. Echo also felt a little embarrassed. Although I don't know what kind of method they used, they did arrive first. That's really embarrassing. One knight clenched his fist and looked indignant. We were supposed to welcome the people from the other guilds, but they caught up with us first, and then they arrived at the rendezvous point ahead of us. This is really a big mistake. After saying that, one knight put his index and middle finger together and pointed at Echo. Which guild was the first to arrive? Echo immediately answered. The first to arrive was the people from Cat Shelter. This sentence made Noah, who was quietly listening at the side, raise his head. Cat Shelter? Yi asked in confusion. How many people came? Who are they? That. The voice suddenly became hesitant. It said that only one person came. Only one person? One knight was stunned. Only one person? Elusha and the others were also stunned. Only Noah's heart skipped a beat. He asked without hesitation. Who is that person? We haven't heard of her either. Echo hesitated for a moment and finally answered truthfully. But it seems to be just a little girl. Noah's eyes suddenly flashed. Could it be, Noah, who had an idea in his mind, couldn't sit still and stood up directly. I'll go and take a look first. Without giving Elusha and Gray time to react, Noah suddenly jumped down from the magic explosive airship. In the next second, accompanied by a burst of golden light, the golden arc suddenly shot out and flew to the other side of the sky. Chapter 1045. Shio. The sharp sound of something breaking through the air was incessant, causing the originally peaceful sky to seem as though it had been disturbed, causing waves of turbulence in the air. The entire body of the arc was a resplendent gold and beautiful emerald green. It was like a flying bird, and like a golden meteor, it flashed across the sky and flew forward at an extremely fast speed. Noah, who was sitting on the throne of the Vimanas, looked at the scenery that was constantly moving backwards. He identified the map in his hand, and after confirming his current location, he raised his eyes and looked forward. Is it there? Following the flight of the Vimanas, a boundless sea of trees appeared before Noah's eyes like a boundless sea of green. As the Vimanas soared through the horizon neared the sea of trees, its speed gradually slowed down. Only when it reached the edge of the sea of trees did it come to a complete stop, as it hovered in midair. The villa of the Blue Pegasus is somewhere around here, right? Under Noah's control, the flying relic named Vimanas started to slowly rotate around the surroundings. It was just like a flying bird that was slowly circling the area. Not long after, Noah finally saw it. Not far from the ocean of trees, there was a villa located in the suburbs. Seeing the villa, Noah's eyes lit up. It's there. The moment he finished speaking, the Vimanas flying in the sky immediately turned and flew towards the direction of the villa. Only when it was above the villa did it slow down and descend. Noah, who had jumped down from the Vimanas, landed steadily on the ground and looked forward. It was a villa that was no different from an ordinary mansion. It did not have overly luxurious decorations, nor did it have an overly exaggerated appearance. It was just an ordinary villa. However, at this moment, the villa's door was wide open. From where Noah was looking, he could still see it clearly. In the villa, in the hall on the first floor, there was a figure standing there. Noah's heart began to beat wildly. Although he could not see the full appearance of the figure, Noah's outstanding sensing ability allowed him to feel a familiar aura that he had not felt for a long time. Xiang had mentioned before that there was only one sorcerer from the cat shelter. Moreover, it was a little girl. From then on, Noah had been guessing whether the other party was the person he knew. Now, his guess had finally been confirmed. Lifting his feet, Noah could not help but walk towards the villa. When Noah arrived at the villa's door, in the villa, a tender and cute voice echoed. Why is no one here yet? Her voice faintly carried a feeling of weeping, causing one's mind to immediately conjure up the scene of a cute little girl using a pitiful expression to say these words. After his voice faded away, another voice filled with helplessness rang out. You have asked this question several times, so didn't I tell you not to come so quickly? But the tender and cute voice began to have a little timidity. I want to see Big Brother Noah as soon as possible. Hearing this sentence, the other voice was a little angry. This sentence again. You always talk about Big Brother Noah and Big Brother Noah. Didn't I tell you before that although there are people from Fairy Tale participating in the alliance, it might not be your Big Brother Noah? Ah. As if there was no way to refute this sentence, the owner of the tender and cute voice was speechless. Hearing this, Noah's fluctuating heart calmed down, and a smile hung on his face. Not knowing if it was because they sensed Noah's presence, the person in the villa turned around and looked in the direction of the door. Only then did Noah see the full appearance of the figure he saw outside. It was a young girl. She was only around 13 or 14 years old and was about 150 centimeters tall. She was a petite girl who wasn't even 150 centimeters tall. Of course, although the young girl was petite, her appearance was very cute. Not only was she wearing a blue and yellow dress, but she also had a delicate and pitiful atmosphere, which would definitely make people subconsciously have feelings of love for her. The most eye-catching thing was the long dark blue hair of the young girl. Like a waterfall, it was vertical, reaching the waist, very elegant dark blue hair. Seeing that dark blue waist-length hair, Noah seemed to be able to see the little girl with dark blue shoulder-length hair, and his eyes fluctuated. When Noah was observing the other party, the petite young girl also cast her gaze on Noah. Then, a doll-like cute and delicate face completely froze. Noah could see it. In the young girl's eyes, there were emotions of surprise, confusion, doubt, and disbelief. In addition to these emotions, there was another emotion that occupied almost all of that pair of beautiful big eyes. That is, excitement. Looking at Noah, who appeared in the direction of the door, the young girl clenched one hand in front of her body, as if she saw a close family member, but she was a little uncertain, timid, and pitiful that she couldn't go forward to greet him. However, not knowing if it was because the excitement occupied most of the young girl's heart, in the end, the young girl still mustered up the courage. That. Excuse me, you are. Hearing this, Noah smiled, very helpless. Don't recognize me? Saying such a sentence, Noah half squatted down and cast a gentle gaze on the young girl. But, I knew you were coming before I saw you, Wendy. It has been 7 years since Noah and Wendy separated. In 7 years, Noah has grown from a child to an adult. His temperament and appearance are very different from back then. On the contrary, Wendy can vaguely see a trace of the past. But, you have also grown up. Hearing Noah's voice, the young girl Wendy's eyes finally filled with excitement. Big Brother Noah. Like a fledgling returning to its nest, Wendy suddenly pounced in Noah's direction, buried her head, and dove into Noah's embrace. Noah almost immediately opened his arms, tightly hugging the pouncing Wendy, and immediately patted Wendy's head. You have really grown up, Wendy. Big Brother Noah. Big Brother Noah. Wendy buried her head in Noah's embrace, with a trace of a crying voice, sounded. I finally see you again, I have missed you so much. Up until 7 years ago, Wendy was still isolated from the rest of the world, never having interacted with a single person. In her life, she did not even have a mother, and was an orphan who was raised by a dragon named Grandine. 7 years ago, the dragon Grandine disappeared, and the young girl Wendy became completely alone, wandering helplessly in the forest. Even now, Noah has not forgotten. Back then, he had only made the slightest noise, and this young girl was immediately frightened and hid. Before that, the young girl had also caused a ghost's weeping incident, which almost caused a huge riot. Apart from Grandine, the first person Wendy saw in her life was Noah. Wendy still remembered it to this day. Back then, when Grandine disappeared, Noah found her hiding in the bushes, trembling, and reached out to her. If there was one person in this world who was the most important to Wendy, it would definitely be the mother who raised her, Grandine. However, if there was one person who was the most important to Wendy in this world, it would be Noah, and no one else. Feeling the longing in Wendy's heart, Noah was touched. Undoubtedly, they had been separated for as long as 7 years, but Wendy did not show the slightest trace of resentment, which dissipated the trace of unfamiliarity in Noah's heart. Chapter 1046. Back then, Noah had met Wendy by chance, and through various coincidences, they had been together for a short period of time. That period of time was only a few short days. Although those few days were unforgettable for Noah, Noah had only treated Wendy as a cute little sister, and had never thought of interfering with her life. Otherwise, after knowing that Wendy had been placed in the cat shelter by Mishgang, Noah would have gone to find her long ago. The reason why he hadn't done so was because he thought that the short few days of interaction back then was only a small interlude to Wendy. After 7 years of tempering, it should have long been forgotten. Who would have thought that when they met again, Wendy's attitude hadn't changed in the slightest compared to 7 years ago? Instead, because of the long time she had missed Noah, she longed to meet him even more. Noah really didn't think that he was still so important to Wendy. Therefore, when he felt Wendy hugging him tightly and crying tears of joy, Noah was really touched. Although this child was raised by a dragon, she was kinder and more humane than anyone else. Okay, don't cry. Holding Wendy in his arms, Noah lifted her face and gazed at her tear-stained face. Then, he gently wiped away the tears on Wendy's face. You've already grown up, why are you still crying so much like before? Because. Wendy sobbed as she allowed Noah to wipe away her tears. I really miss Big Brother Noah, really? Noah sighed and patted Wendy's head. I miss Wendy too. This was the truth. Although he didn't want to interfere with Wendy's life, Noah didn't forget that short few days 7 years ago. Otherwise, Noah wouldn't have volunteered to participate in the alliance just because there was a cat shelter in the alliance this time. It's just that compared to 7 years ago, you've changed a lot. Noah suddenly smiled. You're already able to participate in such a dangerous mission alone. However, as soon as this sentence fell, a voice answered Noah's words. I'm not alone. This voice woke Noah up. Indeed, before entering the villa, Wendy seemed to be talking to someone. It was obviously Wendy's companion. However, undoubtedly, Blue Pegasus had said that this time, there was only one magic shooter who came to participate in the Alliance's cat shelter. Could it be that person wasn't Wendy? Thinking this way, Noah also turned his gaze towards the source of the voice. However, the scene that entered his sight made Noah completely stunned on the spot. He saw that not far in front of Wendy, there was a figure that was only about 20 or 30 centimeters tall. It was a cat. The cat had white fur all over its body, but a pair of pink ears. It was wearing a short red dress and a bow on its tail. It was obviously a female cat. At this time, the cat was standing like a human, with its arms crossed, and looked at Noah with a very human-like gaze. You're the brother Noah that Wendy always mentions every 2 to 3 days, the one that has been on her mind for so many years? Hearing this sentence, Noah's first reaction was not the other's gaze and suspicious tone, but a more realistic question. The cat spoke. Noah had been to many worlds and had seen a lot of strange things. In particular, during the 3 months of traveling in the world of the God Slayer, Noah had seen many mythological beasts that were inextricably linked to the god and could speak to him. Noah has seen dragons that can speak. Noah has seen snakes that can speak. Noah has seen birds that can speak. Of course, Noah had seen cats that could talk before. However, Noah has only seen cats that can speak in this world. That is Hubby. Noah thought that in this world, Hubby should be the only cat that can speak. Who would have thought that there would be another one here? On the contrary, the white cat showed a trace of disapproval towards Noah's surprise. What? Is it strange that cats can speak? Normally speaking, in fact, it is really strange that cats can speak. If Lucy was here, she would probably complain like this again. Xia Lulu. Wendy puffed up her cheeks. Don't talk to Big Brother Noah like that. For you, he is your most important Big Brother Noah, but for me, he is just a human male. The white cat named Xia Lulu snorted softly and turned away. Really, from the beginning, as long as I said something bad about this person, you immediately sang the opposite of me. Undoubtedly, you listen to me in other things, and you don't have the courage to quarrel with me. But Big Brother Noah is Big Brother Noah. Wendy first said this to Xia Lulu with some embarrassment, then looked timidly at Noah and said so. Big Brother Noah, don't be angry with Xia Lulu. If it weren't for Xia Lulu, I wouldn't have been able to see Big Brother Noah so quickly. Although before that, I didn't know whether Big Brother Noah would come or not. That's why I said, you are a really troublesome child. Xia Lulu nagged. You didn't even know if this human male would come and you volunteered to participate in this crusade mission, and kept dragging me to bring you here. There should be a limit, right? So. Sorry. Wendy seemed to feel that she was a little unreasonable in this matter, so she apologized in low spirits. Noah finally understood why Wendy was able to reach the rendezvous point so quickly. Was it because she heard that Fairy Tale would be participating in this alliance? Wendy was probably holding on to a trace of hope that she could see Noah here, so she rushed here in a hurry. Thinking of this, Noah was really ashamed. Although Noah missed Wendy very much, it could not compare to Wendy's longing for him. Obviously, 7 years ago, when Grandine left Wendy, Noah found Wendy at that time, so that Wendy would not be alone and helpless in the forest. This left a deep impression on Wendy's young heart. Then, Noah patted Wendy's little head and looked at Xia Lulu. You are Wendy's friend, right? Thank you for tolerating Wendy's stubbornness. Hearing Noah's frank thanks, Xia Lulu was not used to it, so she deliberately snorted and said this. I was just worried that Wendy might be deceived by someone. It has nothing to do with you. Seeing Xia Lulu's reaction, Noah could not help but laugh. This white cat was completely different from Hubby. If Hubby was a nonsensical street performer, then Xia Lulu would be a tsundere, right? In other words, this white cat was not good at dealing with people's good intentions, but was rather merciless towards people's bad intentions. Anyway, thank you very much. Noah said to Xia Lulu, then turned back to Wendy in his arms and stroked Wendy's head. Tell me how you have been for the past 7 years. Wendy nodded heavily, and an extremely cute smile appeared on her face. Noah could not help but hug the little body in his arms a little tighter. It was precisely because of this that Noah did not notice it. When he was very happy with Wendy, a silver dagger on his waist exuded a faint light. About 2 hours later, Alusha and the others finally arrived at the villa. As soon as they arrived at the villa, Nazi seemed to have been liberated and breathed a sigh of relief. The others were frightened by the scene in front of them. Your acquaintance? Alusha, Lucy, and Gray looked at Wendy, who was standing next to Noah, and looked at each other. Cat. Iya, Xiang, Lian, and Yifan pointed at Xia Lulu and made a fuss about nothing. As for Hubby, the moment he saw Xia Lulu, he was completely stunned. Chapter 1047. Wendy seemed to be a little nervous as Alusha, Lucy, and Gray stared at her with their eyes wide open. She spoke in a very restrained and timid voice. I'm Wendy Mabel from the Cat Shelter. Nice to meet you. Hearing this, Alusha, Lucy, and Gray looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. What is Cat Shelter thinking? Gray asked without any scruples. This is a crusade mission, and it's an important crusade mission against one of the dark guilds of the Baram Alliance that controls the entire continent. Why would they let a child come? Not to mention Gray, even Alusha and Lucy had the same idea. It wasn't that Alusha and the others were looking down on children. After all, Noah and Alusha were already magic shooters who could take charge of an area when they were Wendy's age. Therefore, everyone didn't judge Wendy's strength by her appearance. What made everyone so confused was that this mission was not suitable for children at all. No matter what, this was a crusade mission. In other words, when it was necessary, no matter who it was, they had to kill their enemies and kill them directly. And how could a child participate in such a bloody mission? Of course, Wendy didn't know about this idea. When she saw everyone's confused look, she didn't seem to know what to do. On the contrary, Naz, who got off the vehicle and was finally revived, twitched the bridge of his nose and looked at Wendy with a puzzled gaze. This smell. It feels a bit familiar. Noah, who clearly saw Naz's performance, smiled slightly. I say, don't underestimate Wendy. Noah stretched out his hand and patted Wendy's little head, who was standing beside him and snuggling up to him, and said so. Although there may be no guarantee in terms of combat power, Wendy has magic that can heal any injury. As a support, that's not ordinary. Heal? Elisha and Gray both looked at Wendy in surprise. Wait. Lucy seemed to have thought of something and said in surprise. Healing magic? Isn't that a magic that has been lost? Yes. In today's magic world, there were many magic that could have similar healing effects, but most of them were like detoxification, pain relief, or removal of curses. The kind of magic that could really heal injuries had been lost a long time ago. So far, in this world, even Noah had only seen this kind of healing magic from Makarov's best friend, the old lady named Polyusia. Other than that, in this world, Noah had never heard of anyone who had magic that could directly heal injuries. However, Wendy possessed this kind of magic. Noah had seen it with his own eyes. Because, back then, Wendy used this magic to heal Mishgang, whom they had encountered by chance in the forest. The magic that Wendy has mastered is the magic that has been lost, the lost magic. Noah glanced in Nazi's direction. Moreover, Wendy's magic is the same type as yours, Nazi. The same type? Nazi was stunned. The same type? Lucy was also stunned. Only Elisha and Gray thought of something and were stunned. Could it be, it's similar to what you think? Noah suddenly smiled. Wendy is the master of the Dragon Slayer magic, in the sky, a real Dragon Slayer magic shooter. Elisha, Lucy, and Gray were shocked and stared at Wendy in amazement. Dragon Slayer magic shooter? Nazi's eyes widened as he stared at Wendy foolishly. He didn't react for a long time. Dragon Slayer magic shooter. As the name implied, it was a magic shooter who had mastered the magic that could destroy dragons, and could even transform their physique into that of dragons. A magic shooter who could even kill a dragon. Thinking about it, it was impossible for her to be an ordinary magic shooter. And this little girl who was more delicate than anyone, and even more timid than anyone else, was a Dragon Slayer magic shooter? That huge contrast caused everyone present to be stunned and unable to react. Under the stunned gazes of everyone, Wendy felt a little nervous and shy. Her small body involuntarily hid behind Noah, tightly grabbing onto Noah's clothes. Okay, don't scare Wendy. Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he protected Wendy, who was hiding behind him. Although she is a Dragon Slayer magic shooter, the Dragon Slayer magic, in the sky, is not only a killing magic, but also has healing and auxiliary abilities. Wendy's combat power is probably not very good, but her attainments in various auxiliary magic are not shallow. She knew how to heal wounds 7 years ago, so don't look at her with strange eyes. I see. Elisha smiled bitterly, and then a gentle expression appeared on her face as she spoke to Wendy. Sorry, we didn't mean to scare you, we were just a little surprised. Please give us more advice in the next period of time. Yes. Yes. Wendy froze for a moment, and then nodded repeatedly after coming to her senses. That child is also a Dragon Slayer magic shooter? Naz muttered while looking straight at Wendy. I wonder if she was also raised by a dragon? Harpy? However, Naz, who was looking in Harpy's direction, was stunned again. It was because Harpy, who was at Naz's feet, didn't hear Naz's words at all, and was staring blankly ahead. There, Xia Lulu was hugging her arms, and seemed to have felt Harpy's gaze. After glancing at Harpy, she snorted coldly and turned her head away. At this moment, Harpy trembled all over as if he had been electrocuted, and love appeared in his eyes. So cute, it seemed that this tomcat was beginning to think of love. In any case, in the alliance army formed by the 4 major guilds, the magic shooters of Fairy Tale, Blue Pegasus, and Cat Shelter have all gathered. In the center of the hall, a pompous figure that looked like the Thinker but seemed to have a spotlight all over his body opened his mouth as if to emphasize his presence. Next, we just need to wait for the last Lamia scale to gather. Then, we can set off and go on a crusade against the 6 demon generals. Oration cease. Everyone nodded in unison. However, according to the plan, only Blue Pegasus should have arrived at the gathering point during this period of time. Echo stepped forward, came to Knight's side, and looked around at everyone. But due to various reasons, the people from Fairy Tale and Cat Shelter also arrived first. If we calculate according to the planned time, the Lamia scale shouldn't arrive so soon. Ivan also spoke up. So, before everyone is here, please take a rest. There are already many empty rooms in this villa. Lotus's hands were still in her pockets as she said slowly. You can choose the room you like and take a rest. Noah and the others immediately exchanged glances, and then immediately nodded. At this time, Wendy held Noah's hand, and her face was full of hope. Seeing this, Noah laughed and patted Wendy's head. Wendy, come with me. Thus, Wendy smiled happily. Wow, on the open-air balcony of a room, Wendy looked at the endless sea of trees and the sky, and was somewhat moved and exclaimed. It's so beautiful, the president of Pegasus really knows how to enjoy life. Noah was also here, looking at the scenery outside, and shrugged. However, now it's our turn. But Wendy snuggled up to Noah without any scruples, and looked very happy. As long as I can be with Big Brother Noah, I'm already very happy. Is that so? Noah could not help but laugh, and then he remembered something. Oh right, Wendy, let me introduce you to someone. Chapter 1048. Introduce someone to me? Hearing Noah's words, Wendy was puzzled. Didn't Noah already introduce his companions to Wendy? Now, who else could introduce them? Under Wendy's puzzled gaze, Noah pulled out the small silver sword from his waist. Aster. Come out. While saying this, Noah also activated the divine aura source in his body. Through his arm, he channeled it into the small silver sword in his hand. In the past, whenever Aster was carried around by Noah in this form, Noah would first go through this step when calling out to Aster. Because, sometimes, Aster could be in a deep sleep and could not be woken up by just calling out to him. Therefore, he had to use the method of channeling divine aura to wake Aster up. Wang, under the channeling of divine aura, the small silver sword in Noah's hand emitted a gentle glow. This was the sign that Aster was waking up. Noah, who had a spirit contract with Aster, could clearly feel the awakening of the spirit contract. However, when Aster woke up, the small silver sword that was emitting a gentle glow suddenly dimmed. Noah was stunned. What's going on? Full of doubts, Noah continued channeling divine aura into the small silver sword. However, this time, under the infusion of Noah's divine power, not only did the elven device in the form of a small silver sword not emit any light, but it also gradually retracted the brilliance on it. After a while, it returned to its tranquil state. Noah finally cried out in surprise. What's going on? Big Brother Noah? Wendy tilted her head and looked at Noah in confusion. What's going on with you? Noah did not say anything. Instead, he frowned and stared at the small silver sword in his hand. Through the contract with Aster, Noah could clearly feel the familiar fluctuation of life and spirit aura from the small silver sword in his hand. This told Noah that his contracted spirit had indeed awakened. However, for some reason, Aster did not transform into his human form. It was not that he could not. It was that he did not want to. The divine aura that Noah channeled into the fairy device in his hand was like hitting cotton and returned without any resistance. In other words, Aster did not accept Noah's divine aura at all. In other words, Aster was rejecting Noah. He was refusing to show himself at this moment. Aster? Noah called out to the silver dagger in his hand in confusion. What's wrong with you? Naturally, this sentence did not receive any response. The small silver sword lying in Noah's hand was like a dead object. There was not the slightest movement. If it was not because Noah could still know Aster's current situation through the fairy device, Noah would definitely think that something had happened to Aster. Noah hesitated for a moment and said with uncertainty as he recalled the scenes of his interactions with Aster and Aster's personality. Adding on the trace of good fortune that came from the elven contract, Noah hesitated for a moment and said with uncertainty. Aster, you aren't angry right now, are you? Of course, Noah's words still did not receive any response from Aster. However, this confirmed Noah's suspicions. For some reason, Aster's mood suddenly became bad and he refused to show himself in front of Noah. This was not a rare occurrence. After all, as mentioned before, the fairies had their own will. Even if they had a contract with the fairy device, if they were in a bad mood, they might not lend their power to the fairy device. In serious cases, it might even cause the contract to break. It was also because of this that the fairy device had to master the sword dance. It was a ceremony that could please the fairies and improve their mood. It was also a ceremony that could draw out all of the fairies' power. Usually, at this time, the fairy device would choose to perform a sword dance ceremony to restore the fairies' mood. Of course, one could also use normal methods such as offering the fairies their favorite food or playing with the fairies to restore the fairies' mood. Simply put, it was like raising a pet and coaxing it. Aster? Noah was somewhat helpless. At least tell me the reason for your anger. Unfortunately, the small silver sword was still lying quietly in Noah's hand, and there was no movement at all. Noah Gidge? Wendy was getting more and more confused. Forget it. Noah scratched his cheek and put the small silver sword back on his waist and smiled at Wendy. Well, this friend of mine doesn't seem to be in a good mood. She won't even talk to me. Let's wait for her anger to subside before I introduce you to each other. Got it. Wendy nodded obediently. That appearance reminded Noah of the short time he spent with Wendy 7 years ago. Although they hadn't seen each other for 7 years, Wendy was still sticking to Noah as usual. She listened to Noah's words like an extremely obedient and cute little sister who loved to act coquettishly, making people love her dearly. Noah was the same. He caressed Wendy's little head lovingly and couldn't help but say that. I really want Mila and Lisanna to meet Wendy. Mila and Lisanna? Wendy was startled. Then, as if she had thought of something extremely important, a trace of nervousness appeared on her young and delicate face. That, Brother Noah, are the 2 people I just mentioned your fiancés? Oh. Noah raised an eyebrow. You already know? Yes. Wendy nodded heavily. That's because I've been asking everyone in the guild to help me gather information on Brother Noah. That way, there was no way Wendy wouldn't know of Mila and Lisanna's existence. After all, with Mila's reputation, news of her engagement with Noah had already spread throughout the continent. Naturally, news of Lisanna had also spread like wildfire. Since Wendy had been gathering information on Noah, it was impossible for her not to know of this important matter. That. Wendy seemed to be interrogating him. She leaned her body in Noah's direction and stared at him intently. Will Mila and Miss Lisanna become brothers' brides in the future? That's right. Noah's reply was a little strange. Since they're engaged, they'll naturally have to get married in the future. Is that so? Wendy suddenly hung her head dejectedly. Even the corners of her eyes were filled with tears. As expected, they'll still get married? Seeing Wendy's dejected look, Noah was puzzled. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? No. Nothing. Wendy shook her head as if she had given up on something. She lowered her head and looked at her fingers as she spoke in a mosquito-like voice. I was just thinking that since Brother Noah already has 2 brides, will there be a third in the future? That. Noah was at a loss for words. His expression became awkward. I'm sorry, I can't say for sure that there won't be. Noah's feelings for Mila and Lisanna were the most sincere. There wasn't the slightest bit of pretense. However, it had to be said that Noah didn't dare to say that he would only marry Mila and Lisanna in the future. Other things aside, in the other world, Noah still had a 3-year promise with the Elysian Emperor. If the Elysian Emperor still didn't forget his original intentions and fell in love with Noah after 3 years, then Noah would definitely reciprocate the Elysian Emperor's feelings. This was something that had already been decided back then. Hence, Noah really couldn't say for sure. In the end, this answer made Wendy suddenly look up with a face full of surprise. So there really can be a third one? Noah was shocked by Wendy's sudden excitement. He couldn't help but take a step back. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Could it be that Wendy felt that he was too much of a playboy and was starting to feel disappointed in his image as a perfect brother? While Noah was thinking about this, Wendy, who seemed to be very motivated, said seriously, "Don't worry, it's time for you to leave. I will work hard." Work hard? Noah blinked. Work hard? Work hard for what? Time passed by amidst Noah's bewilderment and Wendy's enthusiasm. Until the news of the arrival of the last guild announced the end of everyone's break. Chapter 1049. When Noah and Wendy came out of the villa's room together and came to the hall on the first floor, the scene that appeared in front of them directly surprised Noah and Wendy. This was because the entire hall on the first floor of the villa was filled with an extremely dangerous atmosphere, causing the tension of swords drawn and bows to firmly affect the hearts of everyone present. Ugh, shrouded by the dangerous atmosphere, Wendy couldn't help but tremble, and hid behind Noah. Noah raised his eyes and looked at the situation in the hall. He saw, in the center of the hall, 4 people were looking at each other, and with a heavy expression, their eyes were full of bitterness and hatred. Among the 4 people, 2 were very familiar to Noah. Impressively, it was Gray and Lucy. The one who was looking at Gray was a cold young man with short blue and white hair like ice. From the cold young man, Noah felt a magic that was very similar to Gray's magic, which made Noah more or less pay attention to it. And the one who was staring at Lucy was a young girl. A young girl with a pink waist and slightly curly red hair, dressed a bit flirtatiously. At this time, this young girl was looking at Lucy with a provocative look, which made Lucy so angry that she almost smoked. Without thinking, it was obvious that Gray and Lucy's relationship with the 2 people opposite them was very bad. But, who are those 2 people? Just as Noah secretly raised his eyebrows, an angry voice followed. That human male over there. The one who said this sentence was Xia Lulu. With a pair of wings on her back, she flew in the air and landed in front of Noah, glaring at Noah. Xia Lulu. Why did you take Wendy away without permission? Xia Lulu. Wendy peeked out from behind Noah, and said with fear. I wasn't taken away by Brother Noah, but by Brother Noah. How can you leave alone with another man without permission? Xia Lulu was anxious. Do you know that I was very worried about you? So sorry. Wendy's face was sad, but she still emphasized. But Brother Noah is not another man. This sentence made Xia Lulu both angry and helpless. Because, only Xia Lulu knew that no matter what, whether it was right or wrong, as long as someone reprimanded Wendy, the timid Wendy would honestly apologize. Only when it came to Noah's matters, this little girl would actually show a rare tough side, and in turn, whether it was right or wrong, she would defend Noah. Therefore, Xia Lulu had long known that arguing with Wendy about Noah would not lead to a conclusion. It might even lead to a big fight between the 2 of them. Helpless, Xia Lulu could only sulk secretly, fly to Wendy's side, and stare at Noah. In this regard, Noah could only spread his hands and point in the direction of Gray and Lucy. What's going on? Who knows? Xia Lulu's tone was unfriendly, but she still did not ignore Noah, and chose to answer. Since the two magic shooters from the Lamia scale came in, they suddenly confronted each other. Sure enough, they are the magic shooters from the Lamia scale? Noah turned his gaze to the man and woman who were in a cold war with Gray and Lucy. But, why would Gray and Lucy fight with them? Love. I know. Hobby came out of nowhere, and while secretly glancing at Xia Lulu, he leaned in Xia Lulu's direction with an infatuated expression. Gray and Lucy fought with those two people. Fought? Noah frowned. Don't come close to me, Tomcat. Xia Lulu also frowned. I'm not asking you, but he's asking you. Which male do you want to lean on? I'm here to treat you to fish. Hobby took out a fish from the bag behind him and handed it to Xia Lulu in a flattering manner. Noah doesn't eat fish. Seeing that Hobby went to pester Xia Lulu, Noah could only helplessly look to the other side and walk there. Elusha, who was staring at Gray, Lucy, and others, turned her head and looked at Noah. Noah. You came down? I just came down. Noah pointed in the direction of Gray, Lucy, and others. What's going on? Those two people? Elusha looked again at the man and woman confronting Gray and Lucy, and said. Those two people are called Leo and Shirley. In a previous mission, they fought with Gray and Lucy, but we don't know where they went. Now, it seems that those two people have joined the Lamia scale. Have they fought before? Noah looked thoughtfully at the young man named Leo, who was confronting Gray and had a very similar magical aura to Gray and a cold face. Is it really just a simple relationship of having fought before? Can you tell? Elusha sighed. That guy named Leo's identity is a bit special. Special? Noah asked. What's special about him? He and Gray are fellow apprentices. Elusha said in a deep voice. He used to learn magic under the guidance of the same teacher, and like Gray, he used the ice-shaping magic. He's senior apprentice of Gray. Senior apprentice? Noah's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. Gray's senior apprentice? That guy named Leo is Gray's senior apprentice? Since they are fellow apprentices, then why does it seem that it's not strange for Gray and Leo to fight at any time? It seems that the relationship between Gray and Leo is even more incompatible than the relationship between Naz and Gray. Of course, Noah was not most concerned about Leo and Shirley, who were confronting Gray and Lucy, but the other person standing in front of the door. It was a tall and burly bald man, dressed in a rather unusual way, with the demeanor of a foreign minority. That person had been standing there since the beginning. When Noah came down from upstairs, the other party cast a pair of sharp eyes straight at him, staring at Noah. From the bald man, Noah felt an unusual aura and magic power. Although the aura and magic power were not comparable to the level of the veteran 10 great saint magicians like Makarov and Kildas, it was not weaker than Lax's and Jalal, who had fought with Noah before. Noah knew this person. To be more precise, it should be said that he had seen the other party's records and photos in books. The S-rank archmage of the Lamia scale. He has the title of Rock Iron, and is also one of the top 10 holy archmages. His name is Jura Rikis. Noah looked directly at the bald man named Jura. I didn't expect that even he would come. While Noah was sizing up Tura was also sizing up Noah. Is that the grandson of His Excellency Makarov, the man who killed the president of the Phantom Lord, one of the 10 great saint magicians like me? Tura stared at Noah, his eyes gradually glowing. He's really young. He's as young as Jalal, the one who became one of the 10 great saint magi at a young age, but betrayed the council and became a traitor of the Tower of Paradise. Noah and Tura looked at each other from a distance. At a certain moment, a wave of demonic energy began to slowly burn on their bodies, rising into the air. The sudden appearance of the magic power shocked everyone present. They quickly turned their heads and looked in the direction of Noah and Tura. Noah? Elusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy all looked at Noah in surprise. Mr. Tura? Leo and Shirley also looked at Tura in shock. Brother Noah? Even Wendy couldn't help but leave Noah's side. Her pretty face suddenly changed. As for hubby and Xia Lulu, cold sweat trickled down their faces and dripped onto the ground. However, Noah and Tura didn't care about the shock of the crowd. It was as if at this moment, they only had eyes for each other. Their clothes fluttered crazily without any wind. At the same time, an even more astonishing burst of berserk magic power erupted from Noah and Turtledove's bodies with the two of them as the center, causing the air to become chaotic. Chapter 1050. Who? The extremely violent magic aura set off a wave of air, like a gust of wind, whistling and sweeping through the villa's hall. Wang! Under the rolling of the storm-like magic power, the entire space of the Blue Pegasus Villa seemed to tremble and issued a buzzing sound. Facing each other from a distance, Noah and Jura were like the center of a typhoon made of magic. Violent magic aura continuously rose around their bodies, making the magic aura waves collide with each other, crashing back and forth in the space, shaking incessantly. Ugh, Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan from the Blue Pegasus were already intimidated by the amazing magic aura. Their bodies felt as if they were being squeezed by a heavy mountain, and they knelt on one knee on the ground, their faces full of cold sweat. Liar. Liar, Lucy, who belonged to the fairy tale, and Shirley, who belonged to the Lamia scale, also couldn't help but lie on the ground, their beautiful faces changing dramatically. Brother. Brother Noah? Even Wendy, who came from the cat shelter, was hugging hubby and Xia Lulu tightly. Her slender legs were trembling, and she looked shocked. Naz, Gray, Leo, and One Night could still stand upright, but they also felt as if they were firmly nailed to the ground, unable to move, and their faces were full of shock. Only Alyssa was not as shocked as the others on the spot, but there was a dignified look on her pretty face. He actually managed to intimidate so many high mages with just the release of mana? Whether it was Noah or Jura, they had not used any magic. They simply stood there, releasing the magic aura from their bodies. However, just by releasing demonic energy, the overly shocking demonic energy had already caused such an effect. This caused the group of people to be extremely shocked. This was the ability of the top 10 great saint magic shooters on this continent. This was because the competition between the top 10 great saint magic shooters was so astonishing. There were even rumors that once two of the top 10 great saint magic shooters fought, the earth would burst open, the sky would change color, and it would be called the end of the world. Of course, such rumors could only be said to be exaggerated. However, from this exaggerated rumor, it could be seen how powerful the top 10 great saint magic shooters were in the eyes of others. It was also because of this that in the past, in the council, the members of the council had forbidden private fights between the top 10 great saint magic shooters. Now that the council had disintegrated, such a rule was naturally gone. But the top 10 great saint magic shooters were just that, and no one would suddenly fight because of a rule. Therefore, this was a rare competition between the top 10 great saint magic shooters in front of Alusha and the others. Unfortunately, that was only what Alusha and Jura. At the very least, Jura knew what kind of monster he was up against. One of the top 10 great saint magic shooters? Jura did not know if Noah was really as powerful as one of the top 10 great saint magic shooters. However, the level of magic released by Noah at this moment was definitely not something that an ordinary top 10 great saint magic shooters could have. If Alusha and the others were to observe carefully, they would definitely be able to discover it. A thin layer of sweat began to slowly trickle down from the top of La's head. That was a sign that Jura was exhausted. If one were to release their magic directly, the magic that was released would not return, and would be directly consumed. Even if Jura was one of the top 10 great saint magic shooters, her magic was limited, and she would naturally be exhausted. On the other hand, not only was Noah calm and composed, but the magic that was continuously rising from his body did not show any signs of exhaustion. Instead, it continued to rise as if it was not enough. Over time, the atmosphere around Noah's body, which was completely disrupted by the rising magic waves, even began to let out a mournful cry. The sharp sound of the wind was like a strange whirlwind that kept fluctuating. Jura had to admit that Noah had not used all of his magic yet. However, Jiola herself was a little exhausted. If this continued, not only would he be wasting his precious mana, but he might also hurt his body and affect his fighting strength due to excessive and useless mana release. That was definitely an irrational behavior. Thus, Tura slowly retracted her magic power. Feeling that Jura was withdrawing her magic bit by bit, Noah narrowed his eyes and the corners of his mouth rose. He also withdrew his magic. For Noah, who had an endless supply of magic as his backing, this level of magic consumption was simply the same as a drop of water evaporating from the sea. However, that was only because Noah had the special energy bottomless hole of the mana source. It didn't take long before Noah and Turtledove's berserk magic power retracted back into their bodies, returning the scene to its original tranquility. I've long heard that Sir Noah has the ability to kill one of the top 10 great saint magic shooters. Seeing it today, you really live up to your reputation. A trace of gentleness appeared on Jura's serious face. I was displaying my slight skill in front of an expert. Please don't take offense. You're too polite. Noah shook his head. Mr. Jura's strength has also opened my eyes as a junior. The title of one of the top 10 great saint magic shooters is truly well deserved. After the most direct competition of magic, Noah had more or less understood Jura's strength. Not as good as Makarov. Not as good as Kilda's. But compared to Jalal and Lax's, it should be about the same. Compared to Alusha, it was more than enough. Although it couldn't be compared to the top 10 great saint magic shooters, as a newly promoted great saint magic shooter, Jura was indeed worthy of the title of one of the top 10 great saint magic shooters in the continent. In the world of the shaped moon, Noah could be considered to have seen many heroes from myths and legends. For example, Artoria, who was once the Night King. For example, the great hero of Greek mythology, Hercules. For example, the famous snake-haired witch, Medusa. For example, the fierce dog of Kettle's mythology, Ku Chulin. In the ceremony called the Holy Grail War, these heroes only appeared in the form of servants. As for how strong their heroic spirits were, Noah didn't know. However, Artoria, who appeared as a servant and obtained the position of Saber, which had the highest requirement for heroic spirits, should be about the same as Alusha in terms of strength. In other words, Jura was at least stronger than Saber. This kind of strength, even in the eyes of Noah, who had the current strength, he couldn't find any fault with it. Therefore, what Noah said was indeed true. There are strong and weak great saint magic shooters. For example, His Excellency Makarov's ranking among the top 10 great saint magic shooters is very high. His strength is naturally amazing, but I'm only at the bottom of the top 10 great saint magic shooters. Compared to His Excellency Noah, who was able to kill President Joseph, who was on par with His Excellency Makarov, I'm still far behind. Like a monk, Jura raised one of his palms and slightly bowed in salute. This time, with His Excellency here, the crusade mission is really foolproof. After saying that, Jura looked at Ye's direction. His Excellency Yi, it's about time to explain the mission of the crusade against the 6 demon generals, right? Hearing this, everyone in the room, including Yi, finally reacted. Thinking back to the pure magic competition just now, except for Alusha, almost everyone had some lingering fear. Sorry, Wendy. Noah half squatted down and helped Wendy wipe the sweat on her face. I was too impulsive. I was too excited and didn't consider that you couldn't bear it. It's not like that. Wendy hurriedly shook her head. Brother Noah is really strong, much stronger than me. Noah smiled and patted Wendy's head. Wendy will become stronger sooner or later. While talking, was like an actor who was about to perform a song and dance drama, posing and explaining in the center of the hall. Now, let's start the explanation of the mission. Everyone, please look here. As soon as he finished speaking, a holographic screen suddenly appeared around Ye's body. Chapter 1051. The sudden appearance of the screens of light around Yi surprised everyone present. Those light screens weren't simple projections, but a kind of magic. It was called Ancient Book, which was said to be able to search for all knowledge that still existed today, compress the information, and transmit it to a specific target. It could also transmit the user's thoughts directly into the mind of others. It wasn't directly used in battle, but was inclined towards intelligence magic. And the person who possessed this magic was none other than the owner of the Blue Pegasus. Standing next to one knight, Blue Pegasus snapped his fingers. Suddenly, on the light screens that suddenly flashed out from the space, images abruptly appeared one after another, and some words were marked on them. Everyone took in the images that flashed on the light screens one by one. They saw that it was actually the image of a person. Appearing on the upper left was a young man with a fierce face, surrounded by a snake. Next to him, the words, Cobra, were labeled. Appearing on the lower left was a young man with his back facing the screen, only half of his face was shown, dressed like a motorcar clan. Next to him, the words, Lisa, were labeled. Appearing on the upper middle was a man with a rough appearance, a tall stature, and a square face, holding a book in his hand. Next to him, the words, Hedii, were labeled. Appearing on the lower middle was a young girl with short blue hair, wearing revealing clothes, with a pair of fox-like, slightly tricky, and looked very thorny. Next to her, the words, Anger, were labeled. Appearing on the upper right was a man sitting on a blanket suspended in mid-air, with his eyes closed, head lowered, as if he was sleeping. Next to him, the words, Dark Night, were labeled. As for the last person who appeared on the lower right, it was a middle-aged man with dark skin, a face full of dark lines, holding a skull crutch, about 30 or 40 years old. Next to him, the words, Brian, were labeled. At the top of the 3 rows of images, there was a guild name labeled Orthodox 1. 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease. Impressively, it was all the members of the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease, which had always only had 6 sorcerers. As you can see, this is some information we have collected about the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease. Blue Pegasus said to the people present while tapping on a light screen in front of him. Although it is said to be intelligence, we have only collected the most basic information, such as their appearance and name. The rest of the information is very little, and there is no way to know their specific fighting strength. We only know that each of them has the power to rival a guild, and is very dangerous. Following Blue Pegasus' explanation, more words appeared on the images. Everyone, please take a look. Rang pointed at the words beside the images. Although we don't know the specific strength of the sorcerers of the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease. Hearing Blue Pegasus' words, Noah and the others also noticed the description of the battle marked in the images. Cobra was able to control the venomous snakes he carried with him to fight, and the magic he used was unknown. Lisa used a magic that could increase her speed, and used her super high speed to chase after the opponent. Hedii used a magic that could soften hard materials, and even the earth could be softened into sand in an instant to attack the enemy. Angel used a magic that could summon a star spirit, which was called star spirit magic. Brian's magic was not fixed, and he seemed to have mastered many kinds of magic. He even had a large amount of knowledge about magic, and he often used dark magic. In the last Dark Night, this person was not only good at magic, but also had no idea what level his combat ability was at. This was because when the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease, was in action, this person was just like what was shown in the images, sitting on a blanket suspended in the air and sleeping, and never made a move. However, it was said that when someone launched an attack on him, no matter what kind of attack it was ineffective. Seeing that the information about the sorcerers of the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease, was not complete, a sense of mystery suddenly filled everyone's hearts. A sorcerer who can control venomous snakes, a sorcerer who can use speed magic, a sorcerer who can soften the earth. Dura's gaze swept across the images of Cobra, Lisa, and Hedii, and his iron-like face tensed up. They really have gathered all kinds of sorcerers, a sorcerer who is a star spirit sorcerer like me? Lucy stared at Angel, her beautiful eyebrows slightly puckered. It would be good if we could know what kind of star spirit this angel uses. The last night. Elusha looked at the image of the last night thoughtfully. There is too little information about this person, and it is very likely that he will become a variable in the mission. We must be careful. Brian. Noah looked at the image of the dark-skinned man named Brian and narrowed his eyes. He is the president of the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease, ? That's right. The last night twisted his bloated body, stretched out his finger, and pointed at Noah. This sorcerer named Brian is very dangerous. In the past, he was a member of the Magic Development Bureau, so he has a lot of knowledge about magic. This time, Brian is eyeing a magic sealed in the sea of trees in front of us, which is why he brought the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease, here. A magic sealed in the sea of trees? Everyone looked at each other. That magic is called Nirvana, Xiang said with a serious face. According to records, it seems to be sealed in the sea of trees by ancient humans. We don't know exactly what kind of magic it is, Ivan answered. However, since even the ancient people chose to seal it, it must be a very dangerous magic. The 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease, seem to be eyeing that magic, which is why they came out at this time when the council was disbanded. Lotus also looked around at everyone. After the decision of the presidents of the major guilds, everyone thinks that we shouldn't let the magic, which we don't even know how dangerous it is, appear, let alone let it fall into the hands of the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease. So, our mission, other than crusading against the 6 Demon Generals, Oration Cease, is to not let them get the magic called Nirvana? Gray scratched his head. It feels like it's going to be troublesome. In short, there shouldn't be a problem if we defeat all of them, right? Naz, who was standing at the side with a confused look, obviously didn't understand the conversation at all. He clenched his fist and fiercely smashed it into the palm of his other hand, and said excitedly. Very good. I'm burning up. Watch me beat up all of those 6 Demon Generals, whatever. Shouting such a sentence, Naz didn't even give time to react and rushed outside with a face full of excitement. Wait. Elusha, Lucy, and Gray all took a deep breath. That idiot. Almost subconsciously, the 3 of them chased after him. You want to take the credit? Gray. Leo snorted coldly. Surely, let's go too. Yes. Shirley nodded without any hesitation and followed Leo, running outside. Yoshi. Echo seemed to be affected and was a little hot-blooded. Let's go too. Oh. Lotus and Ivana responded at the same time. In the blink of an eye, except for Noah, Kara, Iya, Wendy, Xia Lulu, and Hubby, the rest of the people ran away without a trace. That. Wendy was a little at a loss. Then what should we do? Noah didn't answer Wendy's question, but his eyes flashed slightly and looked in the direction of Iya. Chapter 1052. Big Brother Noah? Seeing that not only did Noah not pay attention to the large group that rushed out, but instead looked at Iya, who was standing there with a post, Wendy felt a little strange. Aren't we going to chase after them? Yes, Sir Noah, Jura said with a serious face. We can't let our companions do whatever they want. By the way, why are you looking at me like that? Iya thought of something. He was a little scared, but also a little proud. He put his hands on his waist and made another post. Could it be that even men can't resist my handsome fragrance? Jura, Hubby, and Xia Lulu's mouth twitched, and they couldn't stay calm. Wendy, on the other hand, seemed to have believed Noah's words for an entire night. Her tender and pretty face began to change. In the end, she grabbed Noah's sleeve tightly and cried out in a tearful voice. Men can't do it. However, in the face of everyone's uneasiness, Noah wasn't as unbearable as he was when he first met them. Instead, he smiled calmly. I'm just admiring Blue Pegasus for being able to collect information on the Oration Cease of the Baram Alliance that controls the entire dark world to this extent. No, that's not our credit, but because Shangjuan's magic can play a crucial role in this regard. Iya made an exaggerated smile like he was acting. Coupled with that extremely unique face, it simply made people have the urge to turn around and leave. If we only relied on the blue Pegasus, we wouldn't have been able to gather this much information. Is that so? Noah shrugged and suddenly said such a sentence. Then, Mr. Iya, regarding the movements of the other two guilds of the Baram Alliance, did Blue Pegasus also notice? The other two guilds of the Baram Alliance? Jura was stunned. Even Iya, who was posing with a post, paused slightly, then returned to his original state. He closed his index finger and middle finger and pointed at Noah with a handsome movement. The corner of his eyes seemed to be flashing with little stars. Why did Noah Kun suddenly ask about the other two guilds of the Baram Alliance? No choice, Noah said with a smile. After all, the Baram Alliance doesn't only have one oration cease, right? The Baram Alliance that controls the dark world of the entire continent is formed by the three most powerful dark guilds. This matter, everyone knows. And the three dark guilds, respectively, Oration Cease, the 6 demon generals. Grimoire Heart. Tartaros, the gates of the underworld. Among them, Grimoire Heart was publicly recognized as the strongest of the three dark guilds. The gates of the underworld, Tartaros, came in second. The 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, were at the bottom of the list. Oration Cease, Grimoire Heart and Tartaros. These three dark guilds are in an alliance after all. If Oration Cease is forced into a corner by us, then it is very likely that they will ask for help from the other two guilds. Noah looked straight at Iya and said. So, we have to be more or less on guard against Grimoire Heart and Gate of the Underworld. Hearing Noah's words, Jura fell into deep thought. Only Iya, who thought that Noah's words were funny, stood on his tiptoes as if he was dancing. In this regard, Noyajin, you don't have to worry at all. The so-called double-cross phenomenon also exists. Although the three dark guilds, Oration Cease, Grimoire Heart, and Tartaros, are allies, as long as it doesn't involve their own interests, they won't take the risk of clashing head-on with us who stand on the side of light. Oh. Noah's eyebrows twitched. In other words, this time, our enemy is really only the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease? For example, wouldn't the Grimoire Heart suddenly interfere? That's right. ES said with certainty. At least, other than Oration Cease, we don't know of a second dark guild operating near the Forest Ocean. Is that so? Noah nodded and said. Then I'm relieved. The moment he finished speaking, Noah suddenly moved. Along with the sound of a tremor, an intricate geometric pattern suddenly spun out in front of Noah. An astonishing amount of mana gathered in it, and like a cannon, it was aimed in the direction of one knight. Wah! Including Wendy and Jura, everyone present was shocked. Iya's extremely unique face froze, his pair of pupils suddenly shrunk to the size of a needle tip. Under such circumstances, the magic gathered on the gorgeous magic circle suddenly turned into a fatal magic light beam. It rubbed against the air and covered Iya's entire body. Pung! In a corner of a villa in the suburbs, a wall suddenly burst open without any warning. A huge light beam shot out from within, and in the midst of the vibration in the air, its momentum didn't decrease as it violently shot forward. Wherever the huge magic light beam passed, the ground was dug open, and in an instant, a long gully was blasted open. Trees and rocks were annihilated by the terrifying magic light beam, not even leaving behind debris as they directly evaporated. The only thing that could survive the magic light beam was a figure. A figure with light smoke emitting from its body, its hand tightly holding a key that seemed to be made of gold. It rolled on the ground a few times before finally stabilizing its body, and stood up in an extremely sorry state. Looking closely, it was actually a young girl. She was wearing revealing clothes, and although her appearance wasn't bad, there was a kind of unruly feeling about her. She had a head of short blue hair. Her appearance was exactly the same as one of the images displayed by the ancient book. She was the star elf archmage from the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, Angel. Anger, who stood up from the ground in a sorry state, only had one thought in her mind. I've been discovered. Before she could finish her sentence, another voice faintly sounded, replying to Anger's words. Could it be that you think you can't be discovered? Saying such a sentence, a figure slowly walked out from the exploding wall of the villa that was filled with smoke and dust. Unfortunately, when I came down from upstairs and saw Iya for the first time, I knew that he was fake. Yes. That Iya just now was fake. That was why Noah attacked Iya. That's impossible. Anjali yelled out almost reflexively. Those who have been touched by Gemini not only have their appearance, but even their abilities and thoughts will be copied. How could they be discovered? Gemini? So the person who turned into Iya was the star elf you controlled? Noah glanced at the golden key in Anger's hand. So that's how it is. Gemini of the 12 zodiac signs, no wonder it has such a miraculous ability. Indeed, I felt the aura and magic of the one night from Gemini's body when he turned into one night. This proves that its duplication ability is extraordinary. Then why? Anger's face was filled with disbelief. Why was it discovered? Because it only has the copying ability, not the hiding ability. Noah said with a smile that was not a smile. Iya's aura was mixed with its own aura, so how could it not know that it was pretending to be Iya? And Jia's pretty face immediately turned ugly. Chapter 1053. It was just like what Noah had said. After receiving the news that Lamia Scale had arrived, Noah came downstairs with Wendy and saw one night at that time. From then on, Noah knew that one night was not normal. The reason was because he sensed that there was another aura mixed with one night's aura. Of course, at that time, Noah could not say for sure that one night was fake. Until, with his outstanding sensing ability, Noah felt that there was an obscure magic connected to one night, as if it was maintaining the existence and power of one night. Noah understood that one night was fake. However, Noah did not know that one night was actually star, and thought that it was just a special puppet. Otherwise, there would be no need for someone to transfer magic to it to maintain its operation. After sensing the obscure magic connected to one night, Noah followed the clues and used his sensing ability to find an unfamiliar aura hiding in the villa. Talking to the fake one night, 1, was to fight for time to find the mastermind behind the scenes, and 2, more or less, he wanted to know something about the devil's heart. This was also why Noah did not rush out with Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, and the others. After confirming which corner of the villa the aura was in, Noah simply made his move. After all, instead of asking a fake, it was better to ask the person controlling the fake one night. Angel of the 6th Demon General, oration cease, ? Immediately, Noah looked at Angel. Obediently surrender here, and honestly answer some of my questions, then I may consider letting you go. Do you think I'm an idiot? Angel laughed, but there was not a trace of a smile in her eyes. You will let me go? It doesn't look like it. Is it? Noah looked indifferent. You don't look like someone who would surrender just because of this condition, do you? Isn't that obvious? And Jier's smile turned dangerous. I am the oration cease, the 6th Demon General. A golden key suddenly appeared in Njier's hand. Open it. The Scorpio Gate, Scopio. The golden key in Njier's hand shone with a dazzling light. Clank. A dazzling magic array suddenly flashed in the dazzling light, and gradually gathered light particles, causing the light particles to condense into a shape. After the light faded away, a man dressed in hip-hop clothes with a steel-like scorpion tail appeared on the spot. Oh. Noah was surprised. You have a second star spirit from the 12 zodiac gates? Scopio. Angel ignored Noah and ordered. Kill him for me. Yeehaw. The star spirit named Scopio made an extremely hip-hop pose, but the giant tail on his back suddenly stood up. Desert Destroyer. A burst of violent sand shot out from the steel tail of the star spirit named Scopio. It was like a tornado made of sand, whistling in the direction of Noah. Seeing the violent sand tornado enveloping his body, Noah's eyes flashed with a fierce glint. Just as Noah was about to make a move, a steel-like steady voice sounded. Rock iron bulwark. At this moment, the surrounding ground suddenly trembled. Rumble. Rock pillars suddenly rose from the trembling ground. Like a tie, they curved in a very natural manner and shrouded the area in front of Noah. Pung! The violent sand tornado suddenly fell on the hard rock wall, causing a burst of impact wind and explosion sound. The dense sand was like a fog, spreading throughout the entire space. I didn't expect that there would be people from the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, mixed in. They thought that we were the ones on the crusade and had the initiative. Such thinking is too naive. Along with such a voice, Dura, who was holding a monk's staff, walked out of the hole in the wall with a heavy expression. His gaze was like a sharp sword, piercing Angel's body. Sir Noah, let's work together to take down this enemy. Don't worry. Noah didn't even turn his head as he looked at Angel with a playful smile. You can't escape. Hearing this, Angel was naturally unable to restrain her anger, but at the same time, there was a trace of fear in her heart. Although Angel had pretended to be Gemini for a night and did not personally go into battle, she did not personally experience the horror of Noah and Dura's mana competition. But the strength of their mana made Angel, who was hiding in the depths of the villa, feel an extremely heavy pressure. At that time, the shock in Angel's heart was no less than that of Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy. Therefore, Angel knew that the 2 men in front of her, no matter which one, had far more power than her. If there was only one person, Angier might be able to play some tricks and come up with something. But if it was 2 people, then Angel really did not have any thoughts. Noah smiled when he saw the trace of fear on Angier's face. What? Want to escape? Aren't you the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease? You can only be proud now. Angel bit her lips and said hatefully. Even if you have 2 archmages at the level of the 10 great saint magicians, we have 6 people in the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease. You have no chance of winning. Whether there is a chance of winning or not is not up to you to decide. Noah said very calmly. Moreover, if you have 6 people on your side, then we have 13 people on our side. Who is the one who has no chance of winning? 13 people? Angel laughed disdainfully. Other than the 2 of you, the others are just slightly bigger worms to the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease. They are not a threat at all. Is that so? Noah looked straight at Angel and smiled. If that's the case, then I have to tell you that your so-called 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, is just a slightly bigger fly to me. You're not a threat, but you're quite annoying. I think it's better for you to leave now. After saying that, Noah raised a hand. Wang. Immediately, golden ripples reverberated in the space around Njia. As the ripples spread out, silver chains with golden flowing lights suddenly shot out. They were like pythons pouncing on their prey. They circled in the air and coiled around Njia's limbs. Angel did not even have time to react before the chains wrapped around her hands and feet tightened. She was fiercely pulled off the ground and into the air. Like Jesus nailed to the cross, she was tightly wrapped by the chains that shot out from the golden ripples and hung up. Goo! The pain from her limbs made Angel groan in pain. She did not have time to be surprised by this sudden attack and quickly ordered Scipio. Save me! Scipio abruptly turned around and pointed his steel tail at the golden ripples around Angeli. However, Scipio undoubtedly made a huge mistake. In order to save his master, Scipio had exposed his back to his opponent. Poochie! The next moment, a luxurious sharp sword suddenly shot out and pierced through Scipio's chest. Ugh! Scipio's pupils trembled slightly. Then, the light in his eyes gradually disappeared. His body was also annihilated in the air in a burst of light. Seeing this scene with her own eyes, Angel's pretty face suddenly changed. Victory and defeat were decided at this moment. In the end, one of the members of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, who was known to have the power to rival a guild, was defeated in less than 5 minutes. Chapter 1054. Sitting on the red-carpeted stairs leading to the second floor of the villa, Noah played with 3 golden keys. Are these the keys to the 12 zodiac gates? In the entire world, they were the most precious and one of a kind. These were the 12 golden keys that could summon the highest level of astral soul. These keys corresponded to the astral soul of each of the 12 constellations. At this moment, the 3 golden keys that Noah was playing with were the keys to the 12 zodiac gates. These keys corresponded to the Gemini, Scorpio, and Aries. Naturally, these keys were found on Anger's body. In order to eliminate Anger's resistance. If an astral sorcerer loses the astral soul key to summon the astral soul, then he is no different from a tiger without its teeth. Noah weighed the 3 golden keys in his hand and turned his gaze to Anger. And you don't have a second type of magic, right? On the first floor of the villa, below Noah who was sitting on the stairs, Anger was tightly bound by silver chains. She could not move at all. She could only glare at Noah fiercely, as if she wanted to eat Noah alive. With one look, it was obvious that Anger had been completely captured by Noah. We just started the mission and a member of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, has been captured? Xia Lulu looked bored. It seems that the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, is not as difficult to deal with as I thought. That's not right, Xia Lulu. Habi said righteously. Because her opponent is Noah, that's why she ended up like this. That's right, that's right. Wendy, who was hugging Xia Lulu, nodded her head. Big brother Noah is the best. Indeed, it was thanks to Sir Noah that we were able to find the Oration Sea sorcerer among us. Nodding in agreement, Jura nodded. If it weren't for Sir Noah, I'm afraid that we would have fallen into the scoundrel's trap and even been in danger of disintegrating. Man overnight put on an exaggerated pose and spoke with a serious expression. As expected of His Excellency Makarov's grandson. It should be mentioned that Ye's face, which was full of seriousness, was now swollen and bruised. That was when Angel planned to use Gemini's Gemini to impersonate Ye. She beat Ye into this state and threw him into the toilet. By the way, it was hubby who found such a night. Because he wanted to show Xia Lulu the skill of swallowing the fish to show his presence, he almost choked to death. He slipped into the toilet, spat out the fish, and found it on the way. Of course, none of this was important. One night, why not? The important thing was that Noah and the others had indeed captured the captive of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease. Speak, Noah looked down at Anger, who was chained up tightly, and asked. Where are the other Oration Cease? Who knows? Anger smiled unhurriedly. Maybe they sneaked in with me. For example, the 10 St. Magus next to you, or that little girl, or the 2 cats over there, or even that disgusting man could be impersonated by us again. Who knows? What she meant was that if they wanted to know where the Oration Cease were, they had to find them themselves. If they wanted to find out from Angel's mouth, there was no way. That was what Angel meant. So you're saying that you refuse to cooperate? Noah asked Anger calmly. That's not a wise choice. So, what are you going to do to me? Angel didn't look nervous at all and even gave Noah a flirtatious smile. If you want to do something bad to me, it's okay. I like a strong man like you the most. Angel's flirtatious words directly made the innocent Wendy and Xia Lulu's head start to turn red. Oh. Hubby flew to Noah's side, covered his mouth, and snickered. There's something going on. Sorry, there's nothing going on. Noah waved his hand and shooed hubby away like he was shooing a fly. I'm a man with 2 fiancées. I'm not so lascivious that I would lay my hands on a captive. People who are married have affairs, let alone fiancées. Angel seemed to want to deal with Noah and said disapprovingly. Otherwise, I can be your lover too. Lover? Wendy's head was completely steaming. Wendy looked at Noah with tears in her eyes, as if she was thinking about something. Brother Noah, are you really going to do something overboard to this person? Noah opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he caught a glimpse of Yi who was posing at the side. His heart moved, and he suddenly smiled. I won't do that. This kind of good thing should be enjoyed by Mr. Yi. Mr. Yi? Wendy, Xia Lulu, hubby, and the others were stunned. Me? Yi widened his eyes in disbelief. Clearly, he did not expect that he would be implicated in this matter. Him? Angel's coquettish smile was completely frozen on her face. Looking at Yi's bruised and swollen face, coupled with his original extremely unique appearance, her pretty face suddenly became extremely interesting. Sorry, Mr. Yi, I'm not suitable for interrogation. Noah spread his hands and said to Yi. So, can you please use a more gentlemanly way to interrogate this captive? Gentlemanly way? Yi seemed to be led to a peachy area by Noah's words. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva very obviously. After he reacted, he quickly straightened his face and pretended to cough. Don't say that, Noah-kun. I'm not the kind of person who likes to interrogate captives. I prefer a more fragrant way of getting along. After saying that, Yi gave Angel a smile that he thought was handsome, as if he wanted to rely on this smile to tell Angel that he was a harmless person. However, Yi's extremely unique face coupled with his bruised and swollen face made him look more like a fool than a fool in Angel's eyes. Now, Angier was really scared. Don't joke around. Angel could only force a laugh. I'm also considered a beauty, right? You can't even wait to enjoy yourself, right? Mr. Yi, please take care of this captive. You can do whatever you want. Noah didn't even look at Angela as he patted Yi's shoulder and said in a serious tone. As long as you can find out where her companions are, you will be a great hero who promotes the peace of the magical world. Don't have any scruples, just do it to your heart's content. 4. For the peace of the magical world, do it to your heart's content. Yi finally couldn't help but reveal a pig-like smile. I understand. Just leave it to me. This sentence seemed to have snapped the last string in Angier's heart, and a horrified expression appeared on her face. Wait. Angier shouted anxiously at Noah. You can't do this to me. Why? Noah replied indifferently. Didn't you say that it's okay to do some bad things to you? Then do it yourself. If it's you, you can do whatever you want. Angier had to admit that this was the absolute truth at this moment. You. Don't look at me like this. I haven't been touched by any man. If the first man who touches my body is that kind of guy, I'd rather die. Unfortunately, Noah had already turned his back, as if he didn't intend to care about anything. Then. Yi couldn't wait to walk towards Angel. Wait. Angel finally broke down. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. The corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled into a smile. Chapter 1055. Just as Angel fell into Noah's hands and became Noah's captive, a few figures quietly appeared on a cliff in the forest. Among them, a fierce-looking young man who was surrounded by a large purple poisonous snake suddenly frowned and was speechless. Angel, that guy, is actually so useless. How can he be called a sorcerer of the 6 demon generals? Oration cease. Hearing the words of the fierce-looking young man, the other 3 people on the scene all looked over at the same time. What's wrong? Cobra? A man who was dressed like a biker suddenly opened his mouth. Did you hear something? The man known as Cobra was labeled as Cobra in Xiang's ancient text. As for the person who was dressed like a biker, naturally, he was Lisa of the 6 demon generals. Oration cease. It was not just Cobra and Lisa. On this cliff, there were 3 other figures. Holding a thick book in his hand, he was dressed like a priest. He was extremely tall, but his face was as angular as a square block. Sitting on a blanket suspended in the air like a delinquent, Dark Knight had his head lowered and was dozing off. Also, standing at the front of the cliff, looking into the distance, holding a skull staff in his hand. His skin was dark, and his face was covered with black lines, Brian. Other than Angel, the other members of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, all appeared here. Cobra ignored Lisa and directly cast a fierce gaze on Brian. Brian, that guy Angel has been defeated. Brian's words didn't make Brian react, but it made Lisa and Hughie react, except for Dark Knight who was in deep sleep. Angier was defeated? Lisa asked. Impossible, right? Didn't Angel successfully sneak into the Light faction? As early as when they came to this sea of trees in search of Nirvana, the sorcerers of the 6 demon generals had already guessed that the official guilds of the magic world would definitely send people to suppress them because of the actions of the 6 demon generals. Therefore, after receiving news that the alliance of the official guilds had arrived, Angeli was sent on a mission. Angel had 2 missions. First, use Gemini's Gemini to copy important figures in the allied army of the official guild. Through the ability to copy even their thoughts, you can find out important information about the allied army of the official guild. 2. Find an opportunity to deal with the sorcerers who are a threat to the 6 demon generals. And with Gemini Constellation's Gemini's ability, it should be impossible to be discovered. Are you doubting my hearing? Cobra said in an unfriendly tone. I heard it for sure. Angel was knocked down and captured by the enemy. Captured? There was a hint of surprise in Lisa's tone. You mean, not only did the enemy have a sorcerer who could defeat Angel, but they also had the ability to capture her? It's fine if it's just a captive. Cobra's voice became gloomy. That Angel, not only was she captured, but she also revealed our information under the threat of the enemy. She has already betrayed us. This sentence made the entire atmosphere of the scene turn sinister. I see. Brian finally raised his head and spoke in a deep voice. Did Angel betray the Oration Cease? Sure enough, it's because of money, right? Hughie said with a smile. Only with enough money can people be tempted, even if it's to make people betray, right? Shut up, Hughie. I'm tired of your theory of money. Cobra smacked his lips and immediately asked Brian. Angel has already betrayed us. Our information, strongholds, and goals will all be exposed to the enemy. What should we do next? Brian didn't answer Cobra's question and instead asked another question. Who was the one who dealt with Angela and even made her betray the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease? A rather famous guy, Cobra replied. His name seems to be Noah Dole. I think he's the grandson of Makarov, one of the 10 Saint Magi. If Noah was here, he would definitely be shocked. Because Kebula really seemed to know everything. No. It wasn't that he knew. It was that he heard. Cobra had extremely terrifying hearing. This kind of hearing was no longer at the level of being able to clearly hear a person's footsteps, breathing, heartbeat, and even the contraction of muscles. Instead, he could even hear a person's thoughts. It was a kind of ability that was as foul as mind reading. It was this kind of terrifying hearing that allowed Cobra to clearly hear what was happening in the villa at the edge of the sea of trees. Clearly knowing Cobra's ability, the group of high mages of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, firmly believed in Cobra's words. Noah Dole? Brian narrowed his eyes. The Noah Dole who used a golden wolf to kill a 10 Saint Magi not long ago? That's right. Cobra nodded. Not only Noah Dole, even the last of the 10 Saint Magi, that rock iron Dura also came. In other words, the enemy has 2 archmages at the level of the 10 Saint Magi? Lisa felt a bit uneasy. No wonder Angier was taken down. Angel's strength was very good. Otherwise, she wouldn't have occupied a place in the 6 demon generals' Oration Cease, which only had 6 members. Conservatively speaking, Angel's strength was definitely comparable to the S-rank archmages of a regular guild. But even among the S-rank archmages, there were strong and weak ones. The strong ones like Fairy Tail's Gildas and Lamia Scales Dulla could be considered the strongest magic shooters in the continent. They were existences on the same level as the 10 great holy magi. The weak ones, like a Blue Pegasus One Night, were said to be strong by Alusha, but they were obviously not comparable to Alusha. It was even questionable whether they could stand shoulder to shoulder with Naz and Grey. Angel's strength, to be honest, was indeed a bit lacking compared to Alusha. Naturally, in front of 2 of the 10 Saint Magi, it was impossible for her to win. Makarov's grandson, do you still have the snake scale iron rock? Brian was thinking about something, and after a while, he suddenly asked. Then, what about the rest? The rest? Cobra laughed disdainfully. Other than that Fairy Queen, who is a bit interesting, the rest are just annoying bugs, not worth mentioning. Even if they are annoying bugs, if they are raised well, they can be sold for money. Hate AI said loudly. As expected, the most important thing is still money, right? Brian ignored Hate AI, who was loudly promoting the theory that money was the most important thing. He tapped the skull staff in his hand and said this. Let's start moving. Oh. Cobra laughed viciously. Can we finally start? Even Lisa was tempted to make a move and asked. What do you plan to do? Clean up the traitors. Brian turned around and looked down. Also, hunt down the beloved of light. Cobra, Lisa, and Hate AI also looked down the cliff and laughed. There, figures rushed out from the other side of the sea of trees. On the other side, in the villa, under Noah's threat, Angel spat out all the information she knew. Among them, there was information about all the 6 demon generals, oration cease, except for the most mysterious one, Dark Knight. Cobra's ears are very scary. He must have known that I betrayed them, right? Angel laughed self-deprecatingly. Now, I have no way to return to the 6 demon generals, oration cease. Chapter 1056. Angeli's self-deprecating words made Noah and the others silent. From Angeli's tone, everyone could tell that this girl valued the dark guild called Oration Cease a lot. Of course, it wasn't because Angeli liked the Oration Cease from the bottom of her heart. Otherwise, Angeli wouldn't have chosen to reveal everything here. Angeli probably thought that the title of Oration Cease was a kind of honor. It was something like a place to stay. However, the information obtained from Angeli still surprised Noah and the others. That Cobra actually has that kind of hearing? Noah raised his eyebrows. Also, as someone in the same guild as him, how could you know so little about the person called Dark Knight? Just now, Angeli told Noah and the others about the sorcerers in the Oration Cease. For example, Cobra's hearing. For example, Lisa's speed magic. For example, Hedi was a person who valued money above all. For example, Brian used to be a member of the Magic Development Bureau and had a lot of knowledge about magic. Among them, there was the ancient book, which was the source of the information about the Nirvana spell. However, the information about the Dark Knight was pitifully little. Angeli only knew 3 pieces of information about the Dark Knight. 1. The Dark Knight was Brian's adopted son. 2. The Dark Knight had always been in a deep sleep. 3. The Dark Knight seemed to have some kind of special magic. Even when he was in a deep sleep, this magic would still take effect, making all attacks against the Dark Knight invalid. Other than these 3 pieces of information, Angeli didn't know anything else. There's nothing we can do about it. Snorted. Brian said that the Dark Knight was the trump card of the Oration Cease. Only in a desperate situation can we wake him up. Therefore, even we don't know much about the Dark Knight. Then what about the Nirvana spell? Noah asked. That Nirvana spell, you don't want to say that you don't know about it either? Angeli was speechless. Although she didn't know why, the sorcerers of the Oration Cease led by Brian were active in the Sea of Trees. The reason was to obtain that nirvana spell. Why did the oration cease want to obtain that spell? Was it just because it was a dangerous spell sealed by the ancient people? That was impossible. After all, no one would want to activate that nirvana spell without knowing what kind of spell it was. A spell that even the ancient people had had to seal it. Who knew if it would be a dangerous spell that would instantly kill the person who activated it? The fact that the oration cease wanted to obtain this spell meant that the oration cease at least, it was nirvana's was nirvana. That is, this magic called nirvana is beneficial to the 6 demon generals, oration cease. In other words, the oration cease definitely knew what this spell could do for him, so he wanted to get his hands on it. And Anjali's reaction also told Noah. She really did know what the nirvana spell was. At this point, you still want to hide it? Seeing that Anjali was silent, Noah said with a smile. Don't tell me, you really want to improve your relationship with Mr. Overnight? I don't want to do that kind of thing. Anjali didn't hesitate to deny it and glared at Noah. You're such a bad man. Can't help it. No matter how gentlemanly a man is, he won't like a disobedient woman. Noah curled his lips. How you want me to treat you depends on whether you're obedient or not. Anjali suddenly bit her lips regretfully. Anyway, I can't go back. Anjali smiled as if she was torturing herself. It doesn't matter if I tell you. The so-called nirvana is just a spell to manipulate people's hearts. Manipulate people's hearts? Wendy, Xia Lulu, and hubby looked at each other and stood up. Manipulate people's hearts? Iya put on an unnecessary pose and was also surprised. Manipulate people's hearts? Even Turtledove's face sank and looked like an angry King Kong. Only Noah frowned deeply. What's going on? About 400 years ago, this continent was still in an era full of war. Anjali seemed to have really decided to give up and said everything she knew. In that era, there was a clan called the Nilbit clan. In order to restore peace to the war-torn world, they created a spell that could replace the darkness in people's hearts with light. That spell was called nirvana. Replace the darkness in people's hearts with light? Wendy tilted her head and said naively. That seems to be a very good spell, right? I have to say, only you would have this kind of idea, Wendy. Xia Lulu sighed. That kind of spell that can forcibly control people's hearts is definitely not a good thing, right? The more powerful you want to be, the more often you have to pay an unimaginable price. Noah said indifferently. That kind of spell that can distort people's hearts, since it was sealed, it proves that it has unimaginable side effects, right? That's right. Anjali seemed to be gloating, but she also smiled as if she didn't care. The spell called nirvana can turn the darkness in people's hearts into light, and it can also turn light into darkness. In other words, it's a super spell that completely distorts people's hearts. Turning darkness into light. Turning light into darkness. Turning good into evil. Turning evil into good. The spell called nirvana was something that could completely distort the light and darkness in people's hearts. Needless to say, if such a spell fell into the hands of a dark guild like the 6 demon generals, oration cease, how would it be used? We can't sit here anymore. A hint of urgency finally appeared on Jura's rock-hard face. We have to find the 6 demon generals, oration cease, as soon as possible. Not only Jura, but even Yi, who had been acting cool on the side, became nervous. Don't worry. Noah frowned and looked straight at Anjali. Do you already know the location of nirvana? Originally, we didn't know. Anjali shrugged, as if she had finally recovered from Noah's threat. Or it could be said that she had thrown caution to the wind, and her expression became calm. However, some time ago, Brian obtained information about the location of nirvana from a woman who had infiltrated the council and was a counselor. That's how we finally found out the location of nirvana. A woman who had infiltrated the council and was a counselor? Noah's eyes suddenly flashed. Don't tell me it's Arudia from the Grimoire Heart? You know that woman? Anjali was a little surprised. We did find out the location of Nirvana from that woman. After all, there are records of this in the council. Because of this, a while ago, that woman suddenly appeared in Magnolia. Brian tried to find her and obtained this important information from her. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but be speechless. He estimated that when Brian found Urudia brought Hades to Magnolia to find Noah. In other words, more than half of the reason why Brian found out the location of Nirvana was because of Noah. Just as Noah was about to continue asking, a sudden feeling caused Noah's actions to become sluggish. He came to a halt, and soon after, he quietly sighed. "Looks like we have a guest." This sentence caused the atmosphere to suddenly become tense. Chapter 1057. Rumble. Following the slight trembling of the ground, waves of people rushed in from all directions around the Blue Pegasus villa. In an instant, the entire villa was surrounded. Each of them had a cruel and sadistic expression on their faces. With one look, one could tell that they were not kind people. Bang! In the next second, the villa's door was pushed open with a loud sound. With Noah in the lead, Jura, Iya, Wendy, and Xia Lulu all walked out of the villa. Even Angela was tightly bound by chains. One end of the chains was held by Habby as they walked out together. Wah! Wendy looked at the sea of people surrounding the villa. She was a little scared as she hid behind the villa's door. So many people. These guys, where did they come from? Cold sweat dripped down Iya's forehead as he posed. Don't tell me they're all from the Oration Cease? Those people are all guilds under the command of Oration Cease. Angeli giggled as if she didn't care at all. Although there are only 6 of us in Oration Cease, as one of the most powerful dark guilds in the dark world, we also have a lot of subordinates. What a miscalculation. Jura had a serious expression. I thought that only Oration Cease High Mage would come here, so I wanted to use the advantage of numbers to destroy this dark guild. I didn't expect that the situation would be completely reversed. Noah didn't say anything. He just swept his gaze around the sea of people surrounding the villa. After a while, his eyes flashed. Only the guilds under Oration Cease are here. Are there no high mages from Oration Cease? After confirming this matter, Noah had an ominous feeling in his heart. He originally thought that the enemy was in the open while he was in the dark. He didn't expect that the situation would be completely reversed. When Angela sneaked in, Noah already knew. Perhaps the crusade plan of the 4 guilds had already been foreseen by the allied forces of the 4 guilds. But now, the arrow was already knocked on the bow. He had no choice but to release it. Therefore, Noah wanted to ask Angel about the location of the stronghold of the 6 demon generals, Oration Cease, and some important information so that he could regain the initiative that he had lost. Unfortunately, there was a high mage in the enemy's camp who had extraordinary hearing. With the existence of the cobra named Cobra, it was inevitable that some of Noah's movements would be exposed. Thus, in the end, Noah was still one step too late, and the people of the Oration Cease once again turned the passive into the active. Not only does the enemy's camp have some talented people with strange abilities, but as the leader of Oration Cease, Brian's brain is also very bright. Looking at the high mages of Oration Cease who were ready to make a move. They looked like a pack of wolves ready to eat their prey. Noah said without turning his head. Mr. Tura, Mr. Iya, what are you going to do? The current situation is very clear. Tura said in a deep voice. Our actions here are completely under the enemy's control. I reckon it was that viper sorcerer called Cobra who heard it. Iye's face, which was full of character, was tense. Undoubtedly, we have captives here. Aren't they afraid that we will use them as hostages to threaten them? This idea is completely unnecessary. Angela had a flirtatious smile on her face, but there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. Instead, it was somewhat ugly. Brian must have found out that I leaked the information to you through Cobra. He must be planning to treat me as a traitor and get rid of me together with him. How? How could that be? Wendy covered her mouth with an expression of disbelief. Aren't you companions? Companions? Angela glanced at Wendy and laughed mockingly. I know, in your eyes, the so-called companions are beautiful things that can help each other. For each other, you would even give up your lives for each other. That's why you can live under the sun, but we are destined to live in the darkness, the beloved children of the light. While they were talking, the high mages of Oration Cease around the villa narrowed the encirclement little by little, gradually shortening the distance between them and Noah's group. Sir Noah. Tura's hand that was holding the monk's staff slowly tightened. Her eyes also became sharp. Should we start a war here? Start a war? Wendy hugged Xia Lulu tightly and shrunk her head. Wendy's cowardice seems to have been noticed by the Dark Guild members under the Oration Cease. They laughed sinisterly and finally started to shout. Kill them. There are only 5 of them. One of them is a child. There's no need to be afraid. Let's just kill them. Similar shouts began to resound from the crowd in front, and it became more and more intense. Kill. Finally, with such a shout that reeked of blood, the crowd surrounding the villa finally surged in the direction of the villa like a tide. They're here. Wendy exclaimed. 5 people? Angier smiled with a complicated expression. Sure enough, they counted me in as well. We weren't counted in. Hubby said with cold sweat dripping down his face. Although we're not humans, we're cats. Are you still in the mood to complain at this time? Xia Lulu was going crazy. Tura's body began to emit a burst of pressure. Even one knight was in a fighting posture, which looked quite comical. Buzz. It was also at this moment that golden ripples suddenly flashed out from the space in front of the villa's entrance. Blades, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of luxurious weapons were ejected, turning into streams of light that shot out like beams of light, landing in the midst of the crowd that was surging madly. Bang, 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 bang. Suddenly, the laser-like treasures that landed on the sea of dark sorcerers belonging to the Oration Cease were like missiles, exploding the ground, setting off waves of wind and flames, blowing away the dark sorcerers one by one. The sudden and shocking scene shocked Turtledove, Ia, Anger, Wendy, and the others. They all turned their eyes to the front. There, the space around him fluctuated with golden ripples. Noah looked at the sea of people in front of him and said, Since the other party has a way to know our movements, then Alusha's whereabouts may have been exposed. They may be in danger at any time. We should hurry and chase after them. There's no need to waste time on these insignificant people. Hearing this, Jola and Ef finally reacted. The first to react was Tura. Suddenly, a wave of magic power surged out from Turtledove's body and covered her entire body. Boom! In the sea of people in front, the ground suddenly trembled. Soon after, huge rock pillars suddenly burst out, sending a large number of people flying. Taking advantage of this, Noah opened his arms in Wendy's direction. Wendy. Wendy reacted and directly threw herself into Noah's arms. Wait. Angela, who was bound by chains, turned around. Don't forget about me. Noah was speechless. He could only free his other hand and hold Angela in his arms. Then, under Tura's lead, they broke through the gap in the sea of people. Seeing Noah's group gradually break through the gap in the sea of people, one knight was stunned. After a while, one knight's face turned red. Don't leave me alone. Man. With that, one knight was like a rubber ball, rolling into the gap in the sea of people. Chapter 1058. In the corner of the endless sea of trees, Noah's group was rushing towards the depths of the sea of trees at an extremely fast speed. Behind Noah's group, the sounds of shouting and clamoring became weaker and weaker. In the end, it was almost inaudible. This phenomenon proved that the Dark Guild sorcerers under the command of the Oration Cease had lost Noah's group and were gradually closing in on Noah's group. Your Excellency Noah. Translator, Atlas Studios. Atlas Studios in the Sea of Trees. Tura was running forward at a speed that was completely inconsistent with her tall figure. Noah was holding Wendy and Angel tightly, but he seemed to be able to follow her with ease. What should we do next? Let's first meet up with Alusha's group. Noah replied without hesitation. I'm worried that Alusa and the others will be targeted by the 6 demon generals. Oration cease. How big was this sea of trees? Even if it could not be compared to a real sea, it was still much bigger than a dozen or 20 cities. In such a vast area, there were many complex terrains in the sea of trees. It was extremely difficult to find anything here. Thus, the original plan of the 4 guilds was to first search for traces of the Oration cease in the sea of trees and only act after confirming their whereabouts. The reverse was also the same. Even if the Oration cease already knew that there were people from official guilds coming to suppress them, it would be extremely difficult to find people from official guilds in this vast sea of trees. Considering this point, Noah originally thought that Alusha's group would not be able to cross swords with the enemy in a short period of time. Instead of following Alusha's group, it would be better to target Anger, who had created an impostor for an entire night. Who would have thought that the enemy would have a sorcerer with exceptional hearing, and it was very likely that she knew everyone's whereabouts. If Alusha's group did not know this when they split up or moved together, it was very likely that they would be ambushed by the Oration cease. I'm also very worried about Naz. Hubby, who was flying beside Noah, said with extreme worry. I don't know how Naz is right now. Can we keep running like this? Because of the exhaustion of his physical strength, he was out of breath and panting like a dog for the whole night. He squeezed out a voice with difficulty, as if he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. If this continues, I won't be able to run. This guy. Xia Lulu, who was also flying beside Noah, did not know what to say. He was impersonated and knocked out in the toilet. He couldn't be of any use in battle and couldn't keep up when escaping. I don't even know why the Blue Pegasus is led by such a person. Noah blocked out everyone's voices and fell into deep thought alone. How do I find Alusha's group? At this time, Wendy pulled Noah's collar and said to Noah, Brother Noah, I can find Miss Alusha. His words caused everyone to stop in their tracks. Only one knight did not have the time to stop in time, and because everyone suddenly stopped, he lost his sense of propriety. With a bang, he hit a tree. Unfortunately, no one paid any attention to Yi. They all looked at Wendy in surprise. Wendy. Noah quickly called out. Can you find Alusha's group? Yes. Wendy nodded heavily. My sense of smell is a little different from that of ordinary people. Hearing this, Noah remembered that as a dragon slayer archmage, Naz's sense of smell was also unusual, much more sensitive than a dog's. Even if they were separated by a very long distance, Naz could find the person he was looking for by searching for smell. As a dragon slayer archmage, it was not surprising that Wendy had the same sense of smell. Moreover, Wendy was also a sky dragon slayer archmage. Unlike the fire attribute Naz, Wendy, who mastered the rare sky magic, was very sensitive to the abnormalities in the air, which greatly increased the sensitivity of this sense of smell. Over there. Wendy stretched out a small finger, as if swallowing the air stuck on the tip of her finger, touched the tip of her finger with her lips, and then pointed in a direction. The smell of Miss Alusha, Mr. Naz, Mr. Gray, Miss Lucy, and the others are all over there. Just as Wendy's voice fell, a strange phenomenon occurred in the direction she pointed. A violent flame burst out from the direction Wendy pointed, setting off bursts of flames that went straight into the sky. That is. Wendy, Jula, and Xia Lulu were all taken aback. That's Naz's flame. Hubby shouted. Naz is fighting. Needless to say, Noah, like Hubby, recognized Naz's flame and understood this fact. Noah rushed out without any hesitation and rushed in the direction of the flame that rose into the sky. Seeing this, Jula, Hubby, Xia Lulu, and others also reacted and quickly chased after him. Wait, wait, Iya, who had bumped into the tree, covered his nose as he stumbled to catch up with them. The place where the flame storm was set off was on a cliff in the sea of trees. When Noah and the others came here, the scene that appeared in front of everyone made everyone's face freeze in an instant. Oh, on the ground that had been scorched black by the flames, people covered in wounds were lying on the ground in a disorderly manner. Among them, there was Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy. Among them, there was Echo, Lotus, and Ivan. Among them, there was Leo and Shirley. Impressively, it was the group of magic shooters from Fairy Tale, Blue Pegasus, and Lamia Scale who attacked in advance. Naz! Hubby exclaimed. Leo! Shirley! Jula couldn't help but call out. Xiang Jun! Lotus! Ivan Jun! Iya, who was out of breath, didn't even have time to catch his breath and looked shocked. It's a lie, right? Wendy and Xia Lulu both looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief, and their eyes were full of shock. Seeing Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lucy lying on the ground with wounds all over their bodies, struggling to get up but unable to move, Noah's heart began to surge with an indescribable emotion. However, the more uneasy his heart was, the calmer Noah looked on the surface. He raised his eyes and looked ahead. There were a few figures there. Are they here? Cobra met Noah's gaze and grinned. I heard it long ago. Unfortunately, we're still late. Lisa raised one hand and adjusted the gloves on his hand, looking like he had just finished warming up. Although we didn't have time to kill these bugs, they can't fight anymore. No matter how you think about it, it's your fault for being too poor. Hitai declared regretfully. If you had money, you wouldn't have become like this, right? The Dark Knight was still in a deep sleep, showing no signs of waking up. Brian, who was holding the skull staff, looked directly at Anger, who was tightly bound by chains and held in Noah's arms. His eyes and face were emotionless. You're here too? Traitor. Anger bit her lips, looking angry but not daring to speak. You. Kara's angry voice sounded in a low voice. You guys, I heard it. Cobra turned his gaze to Kara and narrowed his eyes. The anger in your heart. Being provoked by Cobra like this, Kara's heart was filled with anger. Just as Kara was about to step forward, Noah stopped him. Looking around at Brian, Cobra, Lisa, Hitai, and the Dark Knight, then glancing at his companions on the ground, Noah's face was surprisingly calm. The next moment, Noah flipped his hand, and a scabbard suddenly appeared in his hand. It was a gorgeous scabbard that was flowing with bright golden light. Seeing this scabbard, everyone was slightly startled, but Cobra's expression suddenly changed. Not good. Stop it. Chapter 1059. Kebula's voice was so abrupt on the cliff that was scorched black like it was being roasted. This was because before Cobra spoke, everyone present, regardless of whether they were friend or foe, had their gazes stolen by the gorgeous scabbard that had suddenly appeared in Noah's hand. Therefore, when Cobra's voice sounded, Noah had already made his move. Bloom. An ideal place far away from the mortal world, a soft chant that seemed to reverberate from the distant horizon rang out clearly. Clang. The scabbard that was flashing with a bright golden light was heavily inserted into the ground by Noah with a powerful strike. Clang. The next moment, a burst of extremely dazzling light bloomed from the scabbard that was circulating with a bright golden light. It surged out like a tide and shrouded the entire space of the cliff in an instant. Under the cover of the dazzling golden light, the injuries of the magic shooters who were lying on the ground and riddled with scars were rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Nazi, who was still struggling to get up, only felt his body that was full of pain suddenly lighten. He looked at his hands with some surprise. The pain disappeared. Injuries. Gray also felt his body recovering at an extremely fast speed, which made him stunned on the spot. Injuries are starting to get better? It's so comfortable. Even Lucy showed a satisfied expression. What is this feeling? That scabbard. Elisha cast her gaze on the gorgeous scabbard that was blooming with a dazzling golden light when she felt her body recovering at an extremely fast speed. Is the power of that scabbard helping us recover from our injuries? Not only Elisha, Nazi, Gray, and Lucy of the fairy tale, but also Xiang, Lotus, and Ivan belonging to the Blue Pegasus, as well as Leo and Shirley belonging to the Lamia scale, and others belonging to the Lamia scale. They were all bewildered as they looked at the gradually disappearing wounds on their bodies and fell into astonishment. Seeing this scene with their own eyes, Kara, Iya, Hubby, and Xia Lulu were also amazed. Only Wendy seemed to feel something from the light of the Avalon noble artifact. She closed her eyes and her immature face was full of intoxication. What a comfortable light. As for the archmages of the 6 demon generals, oration cease, this scene undoubtedly made each of them shocked and angry. Although the archmages of the 6 demon generals, oration cease, didn't spend much effort when dealing with the archmages of the fairy tale, Blue Pegasus, and Lamia scale, if these guys recovered and joined forces with Noah and Kara, it would be troublesome for the 6 demon generals, oration cease. Moreover, among these people, although the others were easily defeated, Elisha tenaciously resisted until the end. If they only relied on the 6 demon generals, oration cease, archmages, it would be very difficult to defeat Elisha. Therefore, in the end, it was Cabra and Lisa who joined forces, plus Hedi who made a move at the crucial moment to soften the ground, causing Elisha to lose her balance. Only then could Elisha be defeated. If Elisha recovered, it would be a big problem. At this moment, Brian shouted in a deep voice. Lisa! Lisa raised his head abruptly, and his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. Bang! Almost at the same time, a heavy muffled sound resounded. The moment the muffled sound rang out, everyone present reacted and quickly turned their heads to look at the source of the sound. They saw that in front of the gorgeous scabbard that was blooming with a bright golden light, Lisa who appeared out of nowhere gave a heavy kick in the direction of the scabbard. However, Noah who also appeared out of nowhere in front of the scabbard raised an arm and directly received Lisa's heavy kick. What? Lisa was shocked. He actually kept up with my speed? Speed? Noah looked straight at Lisa and smiled indifferently. That's considered speed? Hearing this sentence, Lisa's heart instantly fell into an ice cave. Could it be that this man knew the true form of her magic? There was no answer to this question. Because, in the next second, another figure suddenly appeared beside Noah, revealing a grim smile. Unfortunately, I heard it all. That was Cabra. Cabra suddenly took a deep breath. Poison dragons roar. A huge tornado that seemed to be composed of purple mist, mixed with the whistling wind and violent magic power, rubbed against the air, and wherever it passed, it caused a rotten fishy smell, fiercely rushing in the direction of Noah. This scene shocked the magic shooters led by Naz. Dragon Slayer magic shooter? That's right. Cabra was a Dragon Slayer magic shooter. Like Laxas, he had the magic crystal of the Dragon Slayer magic implanted in his body, thus obtaining the poisonous attribute of the Dragon Slayer magic, and becoming a poisonous Dragon Slayer magic shooter. Noah had already obtained this information from Angeli a long time ago. Therefore, seeing the tornado composed of poisonous gas sweeping in his direction with a violent momentum, Noah's face was like an ancient well without ripples. His figure suddenly leaped back a small step, clenched a fist, and punched heavily at the incoming poisonous dragon's breath. Bang! The fist collided with the violent poisonous gas tornado. At this moment, the violent poisonous gas tornado that collided with Noah's ordinary punch suddenly trembled, and unexpectedly exploded without any reason, turning into sparks of purple wind, dissipating under Noah's punch. Cabra's expression changed, and after a while, his ears twitched slightly. Then, his expression changed dramatically, and he shouted. Don't use magic on him. Magic is ineffective on him. What? Led by Brian, Lisa, Hedii, and the rest of the Oration Sea sorcerers turned pale with fright. Magic was ineffective on Noah? How could that be? However, Cabra's hearing was extremely terrifying, and he could even clearly hear people's inner thoughts. Since Cabra said so, it must be because he heard Noah's inner thoughts, and read this important information from Noah's mind. Coupled with the scene of Noah just exploding Cabra's magic with an ordinary punch, everyone had to admit this fact. Noah suddenly turned his head, and stared at Cabra, his deep eyes flashing with a cold light. Mind reading? Then you should continue to try reading it. At this moment, the outline of the stone plate that existed in Noah's mind, connected to the 10 patterns, suddenly lit up, and each pattern flashed with a dazzling light, and the whole thing trembled. Storm. Giant. White horse. Dragon emperor. Beast horde. Priest. Phoenix. Elf. Thunder. Warrior. The 10 patterns that represented the power to kill gods, at this moment, blossomed with their own fluctuations. Then, Cabra heard it. He heard the terrifying whistling sound of a gale. He heard the roar of a giant that reached the sky. He heard the sound of a scorching sun falling. He heard the sound of a berserk dragon roaring. He heard the sound of a wild beast running wildly. He heard the sound of a mysterious priest chanting a spell. He heard the beautiful cry of a phoenix. He heard the beautiful sound of a fairy flying. He heard the flashing sound of thunder. He also heard the sound of a warrior with a golden sword, who could even kill a god, shouting towards the heavens. Those sounds mixed together, making Cabra feel as if he heard the sound of the end of the world, and he was frightened. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.